Right, this is another episode of Summoning Insight, or as we call it, two, not even that old, but compared to Zoomers, it's a self-report, guys. Two old men yell at clouds. Here's one weird thing I've never understood about that as a diss, right, is if there really was an old man yelling at a cloud, you wouldn't tell him it every day of your life. Eventually, you're just a young Zoomer idiot yelling at an old man as if he was a cloud while he yells at a cloud. Eventually, you know, I know this is like self-awareness is part of the maturation process of life, guys, a bit of enlightenment that occurs, but spoiler, at that point, what would your inherent value be? That you just lack age and experience, but yell at things? See, believe it or not, if you were to yell at things, Monty, I'm so meta, I can even do this. If you were to yell at something, by definition, the most qualified and appropriate person to yell at something will be someone with a lot of life experience and who could compare said thing to past things, or maybe even how said thing was in a different transitional state or during history. Whereas the least appropriate person to yell at things and be mad at them and critique them would be someone with very little life experience. And especially as a result, recursively, it would make very little sense for that person to critique someone who critiques, since they also would lack experience, both of life itself and that person, in order to know how much are they being critical or being reasonable. So essentially, if you're young and you see someone yelling at a cloud, you're probably just an idiot, and actually they could be making a great point. Anyway, that's a long, self-indulgent, recursive, metaphorical, abstract, philosophical explanation as to why Summoning Insight is the best esports podcast of all time and will always be in English.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Very good.
Set ground rules. Okay.
Very meta. Very meta. And I think we would be remiss, Thorin, if we didn't talk about the Adam incident up first, right? BDS.
So you said it wasn't going to be like 45 minutes of the show anyway. I know. Okay, go on then. Yeah, you know, Monty, I had a lot of like draft analysis for Game 3 plan, but yeah, let's tell you what. Let's take a tangent. Let's do something different, guys. Let's talk about the drama.
Well, look, people love the drama. Let's be honest. And
of course.
By the way, all I get now on my stream is people asking like, "Did you talk about the Adam stuff?" Yes, I'm like, "No, we're going to do it on SI. We're going to do it on SI.
Guys,
we're going to do it on SI."
Understand this, guys. Monty is not fucking Domo. He is not a reaction stream like kids. Like, oh my god, I better pull up this tweet. Like, he's actually trying to do what you say you want, actual game analysis. And you're like, yeah, Monty, that's real cool, like Gen G versus KT. But can you go back to like, what do you think of like this news post all about striking them? What are you talking about, you idiot? That's how you know everyone's just here for the drama. We're all here for the fucking lulz. It's all good. Because I have to say, Monty, you know one thing people have underplayed? Because of the timing of how that drama chronologically came out, like which facts came out and in what order, right? Which itself, we can have a whole discussion about the meta context of what that might imply. I actually think this almost got like undersold as a drama bomb, precisely because it came out after the match. Mate, if we'd have known the explanation of why he was benched before the match, the joke is the match wouldn't even have mattered. The whole match would have just been people, which it almost was anyway, just talking about the drama, wouldn't it? Like the drama actually superseded the match, win or lose, by the way. Like there's actually no way, people haven't thought of this. If we'd have known beforehand, there's no way the outcome could ever be acceptable. Because if they'd have won without Adam, it would be an insane drama bomb that like, fuck him, they were right. Like they don't need him. And if they lose, as they did, it would be like, you know, you've cut off your nose to spite your face. What are you doing, BDS? Like you couldn't. So the actual joke is, this is why we'll get to this bit later. Spoiler, Monty. It's almost convenient because the person who only benefited in every regard was BDS, essentially. Because if you notice, they got to like, say he was benched, but with no reason, so there was no drama initially. It was more just like everyone was laughing. Everyone was actually basically laughing at Adam because of the Dom thing where he was mentioning like, it's kind of like the upset situation or karma, you're in the same situation. Then after the game, when they've lost, because actually, to be fair, BDS still played fairly well. Like they obviously could have won the series. I actually think most people were like, oh, wow, maybe the coaches knew something. And then when it came out how he was like wrecked, it doesn't affect the game anymore. It can't mess up the other teammates in the game. And then he gets his punishment. And then right after, they like left the perfect amount of time for him to get wrecked by the community. And then Striker came in with like probably one of the best PR statements I've ever seen worded ever in esports history. And not only, essentially, if you're smart, read between the lines, told you, yeah, he obviously was a little shit. He did fuck with me specifically. But I'll tell you what, I've put him back in the box now, and he's agreed to play nice, hasn't he? So there's no problem now. Essentially, that's like the gist of what happened, guys. So if we go back, we can go to every stage of this. There's so much here that you can actually milk. Yeah.
All right, Thorin. So what you're saying is that Striker did an excellent job of cleaning up the dirty mess that Adam left behind in BDS. And you know, guys, we actually do have a new sponsor, and it's going to be Earth Breeze. And you know, might be wondering, what is Earth Breeze? Well, it's a detergent, laundry detergent. So thank you very much for their sponsorship. And I've got some right here. It's red because I have it on a green screen. It's actually green, guys, as you can see in the banner down below. And so what this is that it is a detergent that is in sheet form. It's actually more like a dryer sheet, but you rip it in half and it goes right into your washing machine and it cleans things up. It's in a very small package. I use it on the clothes I'm wearing right now. It works delightfully well. And it is just ultra concentrated detergent powder and doesn't take up any space in your house. And you can get a subscription to it that you can pause, adjust, or cancel at any point in time you want with free shipping, so you don't have to worry about running out of laundry detergent. So it's also hypoallergenic, guys. So if you are interested in getting this, again, supporting our sponsors does help us at LFN very much. I've been enjoying using it myself, and it's just a lot easier to use and it's not annoying like pouring all that detergent into a cap and making a mess everywhere.
Right.
It doesn't take up a ton of space, like having a bunch of pods in a giant plastic container. Just really efficient, guys, very eco-friendly. And so right now, listeners can get started with Earth Breeze and save 40%. So you can go to earthbreeze.com/LFN. That's earthbreeze.com/LFN for 40% off your subscription. So very good deal here. And thank you very much to Earth Breeze. You too can clean up your laundry like Striker cleaned up Adam. And let's talk about Adam now, because this basically, we should recap the drama for people who might have missed it, Thorin, which is basically Adam is all of a sudden benched from the BDS Mad Lions
completely out of nowhere. Completely out of nowhere. No warning, nothing to suggest it. Yeah, of course.
They call up Genax, who's obviously a player who has been in LEC previously.
SK Gaming, if people remember.
From SK, yes. And they say, okay, this guy's going to be our substitute in a very important, third place match that leads directly into the finals versus G2. Now, most people, us included, would have expected BDS to win this series. They were the favorites going in. And so we have a lot of speculation. Now, the first layer of this is obviously that Adam, when he was on Fnatic, was very publicly critical of his teammate Upset not attending the World Finals, or the World Championship, rather, as a result of some personal issues. And then he is suddenly leaving the team for mysterious circumstances.
Right, basically, the quick thing to say on that is, one, if you ever actually look at what Adam said, this is a part that people often miss. It's not that he was mad with what the situation was that caused Upset to leave. By the way, that's technically never been explained why, and I know the reason. And it's because it's a very serious personal reason. It is genuinely nobody's fucking business. In the same way, Monte, as if I said, sorry, I have to leave this show now. I have a terminal illness and will die. You wouldn't go, well, unless you tell me what illness, then it doesn't fucking count, does it? You're abusing me. Like, you would know that is a mentally ill response to that, right? So essentially, Monte, just trust me on this. I know what I'm talking about. It was a very serious reason. You probably heard it yourself. But all that's come out publicly is it was something to do with Upset's wife, who'd married quite recently, I think a month or two before that. And then he had to just immediately return home from, I can't even remember if it was in Korea or America, which year that was, maybe in China, who the fuck knows. So basically, the real problem was, as far as I know, it's always intimated by Adam's fans, that what he was mad about is that he never got the reason. That's why Adam himself made a sort of joke about, like, he had a lonely wife or something. Because as far as I can tell, what really happened is this. Upset, like a professional, told his management, hey, here's the reason I have to go. Obviously, this is like very, secret information. Sure. Please keep it to yourself. They professionally told the Fnatic players, sorry, guys, I know this sucks, but Adam's had to go back and all the rest of it. And then Adam's just decided, because you have to remember, guys, that was his first split in the LEC, and he was something like, I think it was like 18 or something mental, wasn't he just sort of wigged out and stupidly publicly put it out there. So that caused drama. And as you're alluding to, Monte, then people claim the Adam guy was like, and then Upset had me kicked. Like, one, why wouldn't he, you daft cunt? Think it through, you actual fucking cretin. You've just admitted to yourself you fucking called his wife out for some shit you had no clue about. But then here's the more important thing. I've heard that's not even true, mate. What I've heard actually happened is Fnatic said something to him like, should we get Alfari instead of fucking Adam? And by the way, this is in 2021, guys, when Alfari was like the shit in Team Liquid. And Adam was like, you know, a rookie who could play 2.5 champions that weren't even meta. So the logic goes, it's more like he probably said, I'd rather have this other person. And then the joke is they didn't get Alfari anyway because they ended up with like fucking Wonder, didn't they? So like that's like the beginning of the drama. So you actually have to know that to know what happened now. And then yeah, now obviously it's ridiculous that then out of nowhere Adam is benched before a really big game, so even comparable, right? Because the premise of the Worlds one is like now the rest of his teammates won't have the same chance to succeed at Worlds. Well, guess what? Logically, the one thing you have to say, no matter what you think of Striker and BDS, is they definitely inhibited their chances to win the fucking title by doing this. Although, by the way, there's one thing I'll very quickly offer to you and shade in there. The other thing about this move is this. I can get into why I think it's gangster, it's a great move, and it even could have worked. But I'll tell you what, Monte, part of me thinks this is how you actually know that nobody thought they could beat G2 this split. And that I imagine even BDS got that work in scrims and just thought, actually, you know what? We're not giving up the LEC title here, Monte. We're basically giving up one match. Like, we could be in the final, but we'd lose anyway. So maybe this is the moment where like we do the big disciplinary action. Because as everyone pointed out, of the 3 splits, it's the least important. So if you were going to do it, even though it looks really bad, I think this is when you do it. Whereas I would just suggest this. I don't know what you think, but I think if BDS was actually the favourite to win the title, you just win the title and then bench him. You know what I mean? I feel
Sure.
like on that one, it's a bit more questionable because that's the key thing about this story to me is the way he is benched. I've never seen that happen ever with an elite player. Like, usually the elite player, especially your star player, is the one that you can get away with this sort of nonsense. And then, like, you know the stories behind the scenes. Spoiler about people like Reckless. You hear them, but like they never get actually benched in the game. They might get threatened with it, like, oh, you might bench, but they always end up playing the match in the end. And it usually ends up not being the case, not least because the org worries they'll tank all the aggro if you bench the star player. So what did you think about this situation when you first heard of it?
Well, I think we also have to color in the context that it was kind of mysterious at first, and then there was also
just assumed he was injured. By the way, I just thought maybe he's had like maybe something happened in his personal life, or your grandma died or something. I thought it was something like that.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, because because of the upset incident and because of the Oscarinen incident where he was, Oscarinen was mysteriously injured. Right?
Has anyone said anything about that yet, Monte? There's nothing come out still. Because here's the thing, as far as I know, guys, that's like a classic one that I'll tell you that goes like this. This same thing happened in Counter-Strike many years ago. There was a top Polish player in Counter-Strike in the 1.6 era who went to an event, Monte, and then he had a broken hand. And then I remember, because obviously you fucking need your hand to play the game. I remember saying, how have you done that? And he said some bullshit like, oh, I was playing football and I fell over. And then his teammate just told me, like, yeah, he just had a fight with someone and put his hand through like a plate glass window in a nightclub or something, right? All I've heard is essentially something akin to that, Monte, that actually it's pretended as though it was like an accident with the Oscarinen guy, but he might have just fucked it up doing something very silly, let's say raging out a bit. Like, so yeah, that's another one. We are right though. You notice the real problem here is whenever they give no info, it's usually a bad sign. That's fucking that's a red flag immediately, isn't it? Yeah. True.
It's either something deeply private or something deeply stupid. And those are the only two options. Like, because think about it. If some player was like bicycling along and somebody opened their car door and they smashed their hand on it, like, you just say that publicly, guys. You just say, there was a freak accident that occurred that wasn't the player's fault. If it's something dumb or something personal and serious, that's when you say nothing. So clearly, when he's physically injured, it's not something personal and serious, so it has to be something dumb, right?
Here's a quick side tangent that people don't know about, Monte, because this is another one of those things people never track down. They hear the storyline, then no one ever goes back and checks on it. Do you remember? You'll have to cast your mind back. The first season of the G2 Super Team, when they brought Mickey X in to go with Perks in the bot lane. Does everyone remember before MSI, there was a period where you initially like sat for a week and they brought in like Promiscu or something because he had like hand issues. Do you remember his first split with them? He had wrist issues and he was actually claiming he had really bad pain. And at the time, people were scared, like, holy shit, if they get to MSI, will they actually be able to use him? And the joke is, he never had problems after that. Like, he won MSI and he just played all the games. He's played the whole time. Ever since then, he's been awesome. Because I actually know Mickey X. I actually asked him one time, mate, why did no one ever ask you, like, what happened with that? Bro, it's mental. I can't give you more details because we'll have to wait till like he comes on his show and I'll get him to tell the whole story. But basically, this is real. The way he got healed from his chronic hand issues is someone gave him a book that changed his mindset and it didn't hurt anymore. That's actually real.
Amazing.
Because it's just some sort of a book about like how you think about pain or something, or like I think the implication, by the way, is like some of it must have been like a psychological thing and a stressor, and it was like a feedback loop was feeding
Sure,
into
yeah.
overfocusing. And so it was look, it's not as silly as I made it sound, but when I heard that story, I was like, how is this not known in the community? It's a fucking mental story. Which book did you read? Like how? It's like some fucking meme, isn't it? Like how to not have a broken wrist. Oh shit, chapter 3 is awesome. You know, like what are you talking about? That's a banger there. But anyway, my point is, yeah, that is a weird thing about esports. Is like, I'll just say it this way. It's why I don't have any respect for the leakers, Monte, because they pretend they're not a leaker. They're like some hot shit journalists like Richard Lewis, like getting all like the secret info. No. What they are, Monte, is literally the mouth of Sauron that the most evil people in the industry just go to, put this out there. And then half the time that just serves the agenda of the person giving them the info, like the org or the coach or whoever it is, right? But then they're pretending like I'm just an objective journalist doing this, because like I've just alluded to, the real stories don't even get out there, mate. You never will find out why Oscarinin did that. You'll never find out what happened with Upset. The real stories don't get out. So spoiler, when this one does get out, but 1 second after the series ends, I can already guess who put the story in the journalist's hands, Monte. I don't know about you. Like, because you know what we call that in journalism? It's called an embargo, mate. But here's what's weird. If it was secret behind the scenes info that I didn't want you to have as BDS the org, why would there be an embargo for right after my game ends? Because here's the thing, Monte. Remember what I just said earlier? If the drama bomb drops before the match, I mean, in the modern day, some players are even stupid enough to check Twitter during the break, mate. It could actually influence the match. They could all see like the public discourse on it. Players could like lose fucking morale. Maybe some of them didn't even know how bad it was with Adam. The other team would know what's going on. Instead, magically, you let the whole series play out. So it has a chance to sort of be as like organic and neutral as possible. And then afterwards, you just drop the drama bomb anyway. So you get both. You just win. Spoiler, that just implies the BDS org were the ones who put this info out there via whatever methods or channels they needed, you know, which also is why I actually think this whole thing is a masterclass from BDS.
It is amazing, actually.
Because he's nailed every aspect. Think about what he did, Monte. As I say, he picked probably the only time ever I actually would say to the second best team, if you had to tank a series, you weren't going to win this title anyway. So he's picked the best time ever to do it. I've also never seen that, because normally when these problems happen, they tend to happen at the worst moment ever. And you go, shit, what do I, like I say, you go, fuck, do I really blow like title or worlds or something? Nah, I'll probably just play the guy anyway. Like the aforementioned Reckless. So then after that, you almost also, by the way, for real, and I would even say partly because there was no drama attached to it, you almost won the fucking series too. Like you actually almost made it work. By the way, if Striker had have actually won that series with his top laner who doesn't even want to use, and then benched that would have also just been like, that would be like fucking California love. Just pure gangster, just classic OG gangster, mate. Like, so that was already pretty sick. And then after that, he gets to like I say, even the time window was genius, Monte. There was like a few hours when the initial statement dropped where it was like everyone was just, but it wasn't, not the statement, the Sheep Eats Spots report. Obviously, there was a leak. A report came out, right? And it basically said, go on.
Before we get to that, I think we have to mention what Wooloo said about even releasing this report first.
Oh,
do you
true.
remember?
Yes, because I've got my own bagger for that. Yes, true. I've got my own detail. Yeah,
so it's very important before the Sheep Esports leak came out, because it happened before BDS's response. And just to get all of our ducks in a row here for you guys. And what was so psycho about this was that basically I Will Dominate tweeted like, how come this stuff never leaks when other stuff does, when everyone knows it? How come nobody ever reports on it? Basically, great point.
Because I've always made this point, dude, that would be equally valuable information to get views, but magically they only have the roster move. It's a bit suspicious, right? It implies you don't have direct sources, guys. It's obvious, isn't it?
Wooloo tweets, I get his point, and it's a legit one, but I think most of my contacts respect my job if I do it well. I shared stuff like this at the start of my account, actually, and it saw a ton of backlash from the public. Stuff like this has to be done well, and in a general manner, I am open to it, but have to find the right stories. Like, what do you even say about this as a journalist? Like, if you are a journalist, your job is not to just report stories that make people happy and don't have backlash. If you report on real information, sometimes people are going to have a giant backlash to you. That's just what happens when the truth gets out into the public, and the public might not like hearing the truth, or at least not all of them. Right? Like, this is how journalism works. It's a duty to the presentation of the truth, not a duty to not seeing public backlash. And I think Mephisto, You know, one of the coaches in the scene had an excellent response to this, which was this. Are you telling us that public backlash percentage is the metric you use to decide to either publish true stories or not publish true stories? Where does the respectful or not respectful to the person being the subject of the story stand in that scale? Trying to understand. Like, exactly. Like, are you a journalist or are you not? How are you going to burn your sources with this unless your entire job is basically, as you said, Thorin, being the mouthpiece of Sauron, where you get to leak things because agents are telling you to leak them to affect negotiations?
Yes.
Like, are you just a puppet to create chaos within player contracts, within player moves? Or are you really somebody who is leaking information? Because the thing about it is, if you are spoiling people's player announcements, if you are a journalist, the institution should hate you. That's the whole thing, because you are undercutting them or you are releasing information that they don't want to be made public. That is your job.
Yeah, I would just say, in short, to answer your rhetorical question, he is not a journalist. And for these very reasons, he doesn't follow either journalistic protocols and methods and safeguards. And he definitely does not have journalistic ethics. So one of the things, to answer your question, here's what's great, Monte. I did actually answer it using my video about Wooloo, but I'll explain it here shortly for people. The answer to Mephisto's question is yes, quite literally yes. He has admitted as much in his own words of his own volition, with no one forcing him to send tweet. He has done it many times. If you don't know, the reason why those videos I made, shout out to Frankie Ward, she's the one that actually taught me this meta is incredible, is I learned, you know what, Monte, you can actually go behind the scenes, find out all the things these people did. But at the end of the day, people have to trust you, right? And sadly, even though I have incredible record of integrity, people will go, yeah, but you're stinky and right wing, so I don't trust you. So instead, the actual best way to destroy these fuckers is just use their own words. Literally show them, say, statement A, and then show that like a year later they say statement anti-A that can't be true, and then you show they're a liar, they're a hypocrite, they don't know what they're talking about, or they're Machiavellian, they change their position depending on what suits them, politically expedient, like the aforementioned Frankie Ward. So what I'll tell you is this: over the years, Wooloo, especially as his fame started to go up and he got more and more followers and he became more established, like each off-season that went on, every off-season, in fact sometimes twice a year, he would do a twit longer where it was sort of like, you know, a State of the Union type of address, like, guys, I'm getting bigger as a leaker, so here's what I'm going to do differently and better, and I've heard all your concerns, and I'm going to do this. And what he would always say in these, right up until a couple of years ago, only a couple of years ago, is he would always put this weird section in Monte where you could tell he was insecure about the fact he clearly is a leaker and who didn't have legit sources. Because instead of just saying what any journalist would say, which is, look, my sources are all real, all my methods are correct, and even if it didn't happen, just understand it's a real story and I'd stand by it. Instead, you can tell he knew he was full of shit. So he would constantly, every year, make it sound like he was coming up with the same idea again, like going, guys, I've actually been wondering though, because a lot of people are taking my account too seriously. For real, this was an angle he would take. Like, I actually have been wondering, should I just sort of sprinkle in some crazy rumors that, you know, might be true, might not be true, because that way then players won't take what I say for granted and get their careers messed up. Maddest context I've ever heard. It's the opposite, you dickhead. But okay, not only will players not do it, but then also, you know, I'll sort of show fans not to like put too much stock in what I say. And then this is what's key. He didn't just say like, I might do that, Monte. He kept saying, like Mephisto alludes to, like, what do you guys think? Would you prefer that? And then he kept explaining how rumors actually like bring more to the scene because they bring discussion and speculation and they're exciting and make people. So essentially the whole time he's justifying the idea that they will trade essentially illicit information, like nonsense, like stuff they can't even verify, might even be real, but it's just salacious. It gets them hits whether it's real or not. And then I can go a little bit further. Not only did he keep doing that, but then he also, when he made a second Twitter account, because he had a second one that was mainly ERL rumors, if people don't know, like people thought initially, like I did, well, that's actually quite a smart divide, right? If someone only cares about tier 1 league, you have the LEC one, which is just Wooloo, and then you do the other one. If someone's like a super nerd only for Europe, they go for the LFL one or the ERL one and whatever, and they listen to just rumors about the ERLs, because to be fair, they're sort of like a tiered system of fans, right? That even sounded smart. No. He stupidly revealed that his second account, because people would be like, I don't get it though. Sometimes some of the rumors are from ERLs. Don't go on the second account though. They go on the main account. He just straight up admitted admitted, yeah, I sort of cynically figure out which ones will get like a certain amount of engagement, and then they go on the main account, and then the ones that won't get that engagement just go onto the side account. So literally, Monte, everything this guy has done, and in his own words and his own behavior, suggests that yes, he is not a journalist getting real information and then presenting it because it's important, relevant, or like, you know, in the public interest. He is someone cynically manipulating information that comes his way based on whether it has the main thing of, if you notice, isn't like, will it hurt people's feelings? He didn't give a fuck, by the way, about leaking all that shit about CL, who begged him not to when he'd privately been told stuff, and he knew that could fuck that guy's whole contract up and maybe get him sued by fucking Team Rex, by the way. He didn't give a shit about that. He didn't care about Vethio and XL and whether that was a good fit when he took information given only by Vethio's agent and tried to use it to publicly force XL to sign the player, as they then did. By the way, they tanked 2 fucking LEC splits. You know, that could be like millions of dollars in the drain, by the way, guys, off a move like that. He didn't care when he did all that. So I have to say, to bring it all the way back, I do think he just does it when it is politically expedient to his fame and his engagement, which is why, even though the term's overused, if this was Tolkien, his class of fucking race would be clout goblin. That is what he is. He is a little goblin gathering clout in his little fucking sack. I got more clout. That's all he is. That's all he is. Because that's that guy pointed out. By the way, it's a great point by Mephisto. It's like, mate, essentially, if you had like really important information, but like the wrong person would say, I don't want to do it. Because you nailed it there, Monte. That's why you're not a journalist. Because why do you think Thorin gets blacklisted by evil geniuses in NIP? It's not because I put tweets that were rude. No. It's because I have repeatedly exposed and poked at these fuckers, and they know, deny him access. Don't let him get any fucking... In fact, they're even, by the way, if you don't get it, guys, in a case like NIP, that's a reprisal. I've never even actually exposed anything crazy about NIP, but that's a reprisal to show, like, hey, if you actually fuck with us and say what we're doing is wrong, like we're Fifth Lar or whatever, then you just don't get to do your interviews with us. That's like, essentially what they're telling me there, guys, is stop talking and you can have the interviews back. Like, the Wooloo guy is doing all that behind the scenes, never even in public, supposedly. And the joke is he's not doing the thing wrong because he already does what the orgs and the agents want that you say. Because that's the thing that always gives away who your sources are, mate, is this. You can never publish a story that's bad about them. And it just gives the whole thing away. It gives the whole thing away. Because the thing about Richard Lewis, if you notice, is he can publish a story about literally anyone. Anyone in the whole industry. The joke is, Monte, he's literally done stories about me and you. And I was even his mate at the time, you know what I mean? Like, they've done stories about us, for fuck's sake. Because I love that one, Monte. We sit there on the Four Horsemen, and the fans go, yeah, Richard Lewis wouldn't call him out. It's like, he literally cost Monte like $10 million, me like $6 million, and himself. What are you talking about, you daft god? The joke is he's called himself out on that. It's a self-report, you know. You can't win. So, yeah, what do you think about that? Because, by the way, I do think that the Wooloo guy, here's my problem. If he just said he's a leaker, then just be TMZ. But they never can, Monte. They always want to believe they can backdoor into being fucking the Washington Post or something, or the Times of New York or something. They always think they can. They always think they can. They want the respectability, don't they?
It's also just weird that they have. I mean, you can tell when they like what side their bread is buttered on, also by the stories they don't report on. So, for example,
it's conspicuous. Yes.
How did nobody report on the Carmine Corp entering LEC? You fucking kidding me? Like, people knew that behind the scenes. Total silence. Weird.
You say it was obviously embargoed. It was obviously embargoed. Because you know this, Monte. This happened over 10 years ago. What happened was this. I'll give you an example of real journalism, and this is how legit I am, Monte. You remember when Slasher leaked the story that Evil Geniuses was going to... I think it was this, that Evil Geniuses was going to sign J-Dong, wasn't it? Wasn't that... Or was it Hawk? No, I think it was the other way around. I think it was... I can't remember which one. Listen, it was one of them, right? And the idea was, because of what happened with one, he got the other interview, if you remember. And I think what happened was, he leaked one of these giant announcements, by the way. It's either J-Dog or Hawk, I'm pretty sure, right? So at the time, this was like a blockbuster move for Evil Geniuses' StarCraft. Sure, yeah. It was like, this is what one of the biggest stars is joining one of the biggest orgs. And what happened was, because for the first one, he leaked it before they could do their announcement with all the cool splash page and dope graphics. Alex Garfield, their CEO or whatever of IG at the time, went fucking mental. Like, he even publicly was sort of saying, like, this is unacceptable. Like, you can't do it. Even though, by the way, he was absolutely categorically wrong in every respect. He was just doing, like, essentially, like, hey, I'm an owner, do everything I want. And what Slasher correctly identified at the time was, like, it's none of your business, mate. This is in the public interest to know this information. So I went and I got it, and I got it before you could do your big splash page. So that sucks, right? Now, I will say, because actually Slasher was like a legit journalist, he did agree, though, in the future, like I say, I'm pretty sure for the next one, whether it was J-Dog or Hook, I forget which order, I think it was Hook first. I believe then he did like trade the story, so he didn't reveal it the second time. He got like an interview instead that he had the first interview when it came out, right? Now, spoiler, what I've just explained to you with those two examples is what a real journalist on his own would do and what a real journalist working with an org would do. So you notice how if he was on his own, he'd just like it. He wouldn't ever have to wait, would he? If it was a big story, the bigger it is, the more likely he's going to get it out there. But if he was working with someone, it would be embargoed and he'd wait until they're ready to publish it. So as you say, Monte, spoiler, anytime they can't get the info out before it also publicly comes out, that just means they were told, save the info till this time. It was embargoed. And to have an embargo, you have to literally agree with the person. Yes, I won't do it until then. Like, that shows you literally colluded with the original people. So I agree with you, but it's just obvious at this point.
Yeah. And like, I think what's important to note too is that the Sheep esports site did actually run a report on what happened with Adam, which is what spurred all of the responses from Adam himself and then also from Striker, which I think were very good. So basically, the thrust of it is that Adam
one last detail, because I forgot. It's in the chronology, because you might not have seen this yourself. After that came out, the Mephisto question, by the way, a very good question. What a well-phrased question, actually. When he asked this question of Wooloo, and Dom posted it, another thing I like to do with the Wooloo guy is this, Monte. The worst thing about his fan base is, the reality is this, I've figured it out because I psychologically look at things as well as just look at what they literally say. It's obvious what the real thing is. The real problem is, the reason why even his fans have to believe he's legit, Monte, is because they don't want to admit they're just reading TMZ muckraking and some of it might not be legit or might be from compromised sources. So they don't feel guilty about their guilty pleasure of getting this goss that they shouldn't have. His fans do this thing that you'll have heard many times over where they go, yeah, he was a leaker before, and he did do that, but now he's legit, starting now. And then you go, well, he isn't, though. And you go, well, okay, starting now, though. You go, no, fuck yeah. That was just last year that he's learned this last night. Starting now, essentially, it's like the same with every toxic player ever. You know how it goes. They go, I'm reformed, and then the org goes, he's much better now. And then he gets like, oh, problems again. Then he goes, no, but now I really have learned my lesson. And you go like, so essentially, right, here's the problem with that, Monte. As I always say, whenever you get gassed up, all it takes is one little prick to pop the balloon, and I'm that little prick, motherfucker. I'll keep coming along. So what I've been able to show is that they claim there's like, what they do is they always put it 1 or 2 years in the past. They claim there's a set date at which he became serious, and they stopped doing all the shady shit, right? Well, the problem with that obviously would be if I then show that he kept doing it. So spoiler, that Vethio story was the end of 2022. So he was fucking around end of 2022, still doing ridiculous shit with one source. And then now, because I just like this, Monte, I have certain, I don't fire every nuke from the silos. You save some. Yeah, I've got a few grenades in there, a few fucking Molotov cocktails, and some short-range ICBMs. I fire the big ones when I do the video. So I had one saved locked in the fucking chamber as it goes, Monte. So what happened was, I posted, are you ready, guys? A DM between Wooloo and Eros, who also works on his site. Now, wait a second, if you understand my gangster. I have DMs of them to each other. Am I just fucking omnipotent or something? Exactly. But here's the thing. You don't need to know how I got that DM. All you need to know, and you should all know this, you little scurrying rats, is I must have inside sources everywhere. Because that means one of you leaked it. All I'm going to say, boys. So anyway, because I had this, finger-licking good, delicious drama bomb, I dropped it because what it showed is hilarious, Monte. Remember, this website isn't called, like, new LEC journalism and Wooloo's just like the editor-in-chief. It's his site, mate. It's called Sheep Esports, after his brand of Wooloo. So by the way, if I made Thorin Esports, even if I had a different journalist who worked for it, if they posted nonsense, mate, the first thing I would tell them is, you represent my fucking brand and my name and my track record of integrity. What are you doing? So what this DM showed was that, like, not even that long ago, there was a story that was shown that the Eros guy got wrong. And in it, Wooloo's talking to him about the fact that obviously we can't have like things that aren't confirmed on our site. The sheer fucking self-awareness that even privately he would write that. But okay. Then the Eros guy basically makes a bunch of excuses as to why it was wrong. And the Wooloo guy says this line that should just be case closed for the idea he's a legit journalist, guys. He basically just says, like, look, I'm not mad. We just have to get it right. It's like, wait a minute, you aren't mad that he published potentially false information? on your news website. Like, if you understand it, he still thinks that way now, guys, coupled with he's just a mouthpiece of other forces and interest groups. And he will actually, are you ready? He will deny you the public information if he doesn't think that his other... The real joke is this, Monty. His customer isn't you, the viewer. It's whoever the fuck gives him the info. That's essentially what's going on there. It's a fair exchange, as we call it, right? So I think I've pretty much conclusively proven at this point in time, this guy doesn't have journalistic ethics. He just does whatever he wants. But it's the marketing to be like, but I'm now legit, because by the way, he does have a massive following. I think he has more Twitter followers than us, mate. Like, he has loads of fucking people follow his news, yeah. So I would just say this, just understand you're a leaker, mate. Just fucking lean into it. Like, this fake shit where you have to pretend you're more legit than me and Richard Lewis. Like, motherfucker, if Richard Lewis farts, you should capture it and breathe it as your oxygen source for the rest of your life, because it's probably more in there than you're getting from life itself. I went sort of a bit three kicks for it. That doesn't really make sense. Whatever. It's just something I was trying. It's all good.
So what it said, though, Thorin, was basically what this report made two claims in particular. One, that Adam was basically rage quitting scrims. Like, the two important claims was that he was angrily refusing to scrim. And
guys, wait a second. Remember the champions Adam plays, guys. So you remember he plays Olaf, Darius, Garen. Imagine playing with someone on Olaf, Darius, and Garen who, when this scrim gets fucked up, imagine what those champions could do to a scrim. He then goes, oh, fuck this shit, and then leaves. He leaves the room, and you're all just sat there like, bruh, what are you talking? What are you? That in itself, if you're a fan of the game, is enraging. If you've ever played with those champions in top lane, the joke is he may as well be a fucking. The story could only be worse, Monty, if it was like, and then Adam, after a 52-minute side lane Nasus game, left when the team wouldn't allow him to keep power farming. Like, that's the only way it could be more of an insane like solo queue bait. I mean, story.
Honestly, that a Darius player. A Darius main would rage quit scrims. It's literally the least surprising thing ever.
I know.
Ever.
It's too good. That would be like saying a Lee Sin main had questionable decision making in real life as well. Like, oh my God, no, did he go on queue in real life as well? Never could imagine that, mate. Never imagined a toxic Lee Sin main. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? Give me a break. Give me a break, bro.
So the other key aspect of this was that apparently he got into a pretty heated argument with Striker. And so would you say those are the two main factors? Would you add any color to this?
Yeah, no, I'd just say that. That sounds like it makes enough sense.
Right.
By the way, just argue. This is actually a detail I think people missed in the discussion, Monty. They only discussed the idea he was rude to teammates or whatever. The significant part to me, the whole crux of this, is the second part, isn't it? You know this. It's the idea you actually were insubordinate to your coach. By the way, let me just put some framing down for you guys. This team went from using Adam as like sort of an actual fucking distraction so they could carry the game through a crown shot hyper carry ADC to we don't even need crown shot. In fact, get in someone whose job is to not be crown shot and play entirely for fucking Adam. I've put the whole game around you and now you're going to be a prick to me. That is absolutely grounds for benching me, because here's what's mad about this. This is where people won't realize I am actually so legit. Mate, I think about a week before he got benched, I actually said it on Twitter, he's the best top player in the fucking LEC. Like, he actually looked like he was, this system made him look like the best player at top lane. Because at the time, Broken Blade hadn't had the finals, guys. So, like, I actually thought he was fucking killing it. So, like, the joke is, your coach couldn't have done more to make your career fucking dope and awesome. He's even removed, if you don't get it, guys, like, supposedly Adam was one of the people who had issues with crowd. He says, he removed the people you don't like. If after all that, you're still being a twat to that guy, like, I see why he benched you, mate. It's like, at that point, what else does he have? Like, you don't fucking learn. I thought this was crazy, the idea you'd be shitty to it's one thing to be shitty to your team, to your fucking coach. He fucking made you. And also, people don't know, I already knew that Striker was legit, because a lot of people actually don't know that. Sadly, we never discussed it on this show because it was years ago now. When Striker was in Carmine Corp, the year Reckless was there, when he left, a lot of people don't know this. He just did like a stream where he just actually like flamed Reckless and talked about what a twat he was, basically. Like, this guy is, and by the way, no one in esports will do that because they're all scared about the future. Like, well, then Fnatic won't hire me, or, you know, that sort of shit. Like, this guy doesn't care. He's actually a super legit guy. He has like an old school sports coach mentality of like what he understands, Monty, is, first of all, there's a separation between coach and player. We're not friends. And then after that, the hierarchy remains. Like, look, you can disagree, you can have input, but you can't like supersede me and tell me what, I'm the coach. And the reason why I love that, Monte, is one of my most famous refrains on this show goes like this. I hate when a coach gets fired and then they complain afterwards, but I couldn't do anything. I couldn't pick the players and I was gate kept and I don't go. Then why did you put your name on it, bro? Because the one thing you want to say as a coach is, hey, it's like Bill Belichick. You know what? You might not like the seasons, but at least he was in charge. You know that he got to make the choices. He gets to know, win or lose, I did what I wanted. I won all off on my terms. The worst is if you don't. So I will say the striker guy, to me, the joke is I actually think this is just another fucking, like, this is another fucking notch on his belt. Like, he just looks even more legit. This guy's just a very good coach, mate.
To your point about the seriousness from a gameplay perspective about benching Adam, let me read you guys some statistics about Adam that are very crucial to what Thorin's saying about the way that they play around him. So in the best of one stage, Adam had the highest counter pick percentage of any top laner in LEC, with 78% of the time he receives a counter pick in the draft. Like, he picks second after he sees the top laner, okay? In the winter playoffs that he played, he had a 75% counter pick percentage within the draft. So 78% in best of ones, 75% in the games that he played in the best of 3/best of 5 stage. This team was built around giving Adam advantages because, again, what we saw with Nook was the one who was taking control mages blind a lot of the time, a la Faker in T1. We saw them prioritize basically 3 champs in the bot side, Varus, Ashe, and Jhin for Ice. These we talked about in the show before. Long range, engage AD carries for the most part because they were running pick compositions. And a lot of the way this team played was around the counter picks in the top side and the pressure that can generate from Adam. So when you switch players, even if I think Genax is a very good substitute, like they had a very good fallback player, it changes the dynamic of the way you play the game enormously because Adam is not a plug-and-play player. He is not. He is not you can't just be like, well, we're going to insert a weak side top laner into this team because that isn't how everyone else's jobs on the team work, particularly their bot lane. Their bot lane. So it is a pretty monumental decision. But to your point that you made a while ago, Thorin, about when is a better time to do this, the answer is there is no better time. This is the perfect time to do it because you're not affecting your chances for MSI. And let me explain the brilliance, what I think is the brilliance of the timing and of the messaging, because we're going to go on to Adam's statement and Striker's statement. And what this really knits together is you got a bunch of points, right? You got a bunch of points. As you said, points on the circuit, right? So that you're getting, closer to potentially going to Worlds.
Third at least. You've already got some. It's like you give it
you got third. Yeah. You got third. So,
and you probably still think it's possible to maybe win and get second. That was also plausible too. Yeah.
So here's the other thing, Thorin. If you're confident in your abilities and you're confident in Adam's ability to reform, or you're confident that Genax can permanently take this position if necessary, well, first off, we're going to have several weeks off. Basically, the next season of LEC, now that it's over, doesn't start till second week of March.
You know, right? I hadn't even thought of that. Actually, there's another angle people haven't thought of. If they actually had have won Game 5 and won, maybe they just reinsert Adam for the final and they get to win the title or go for it and punish him.
Yes.
There's also that world too, to be fair, yeah.
So here's the thing. I think you're right. They didn't believe that they were going to win this split. Okay, so G2 wins it. Now let's think about what changes if G2 wins it. Oh, right. Well, this year, the Winter Split champion gets an automatic seed to MSI. That didn't happen last year, guys. This is a new change in the format for MSI. And so what this means is that you don't really have to be super concerned because let's say even if G2 wins the next split as well, they can't get more than one spot for MSI, right? That's not a thing that can happen. So you're still going to be competitive for the potential MSI slot at the end of the day.
You could argue if you get him in line, maybe more competitive, maybe it helps you, right?
Yeah. So there are real advantages to there's not an insane disadvantage that you're having right now if you don't think you're going to win anyway. And so I think that when you look at it this way, first off, and then second off, Thorin, I think the other thing to consider is that what does this do to team morale? So if you think you're going to lose anyway, even if you beat Mad Lions Koi, in a way, this actually gives some spark of hope to your team, because now if you lose, you could just be like, oh, well, we lost because Adam wasn't there. It also guilts Adam because I think he feels at some level that his behavior let his teammates down. And his teammates now are expecting more from his behavior as well. So you create an expectation both within Adam and within the team to reform, to have better behavior. And if you think you're going to lose anyway, well, maybe if you fix this problem, maybe if you can actually get Adam to fundamentally change his behavior and his team, you're not depressed as a team. Because if you just straight up lose with Adam right now, well, you know, you're just going to be heading into the spring split feeling shitty. But now there's like a seed of hope. Like in a weird way, it has planted this seed of hope within the BDS team as it exists right now that they can carry forward into the next split. And so now, maybe if you think as a coach, if we just fix this thing, maybe we have a better shot of beating G2 in the long run. Maybe we do.
By the way, sorry, I thought you finished.
Yeah, no. And so I think like by doing this now, it shows that you're impactful. I think it's great that the BDS org and Striker made this bold move. Like we haven't seen a move this bold since Reaper like benched all those players on Cloud9. And that was actually very effective at getting Cloud9 into the World Championship, right? It did change player behavior. It does change player behavior, but teams and like coaches and org ownership are often afraid of doing this, even though I think it often yields better results. The stakes were low. They weren't going to win anyway. Now they have hope. Now they might have actually reformed his behavior. And because he is a crucial part of how this team functions, maybe he will be able to mature and carry that burden. And if they don't, if it doesn't work, Thorin, they'll just put in Gen X. Like, fuck it, man. Like, just send it with Gen X at that point in time. You've shown you're willing to make the swap. Most players behave this way because there isn't somebody breathing down their neck for their role. That is one of the biggest problems in the West, is that players act like shitters and don't listen to coaches because there's nobody to replace them. In China, you just get, boop, there's the next rookie. You know what I mean? In Korea, boop, there's another one. So like there's always this pressure in these regions, which I think helps keep the player in check. But in the West, that pressure frequently does not exist.
Yeah, one thing I would say is this isn't even vaguely like the first or even probably the worst example of this. Like there's been loads of cases of star players being divas and shitters. And the joke is, by the way, oftentimes, if you've ever heard me, I'll give you a little key here to think of past episodes of Summoning Insight. If you've ever heard me take a team that looks like it should be an all-star roster, like a super team, and then they still come second or third, but they don't win the championship. But bizarrely, I don't blame the coach. Like, what do you mean? The coach had like the all-star team, he should win the league. That means, by the way, guys, here's the little tip. That means behind the scenes, I know that coach actually, that super team probably imploded. Should have come like seventh, but this guy did some miracle band-aid and still got them competitive and got them like second or third at the end of the split. Like, that's why there's certain coaches I rave about who've never won LEC or rarely won LEC or maybe just came second or third. So what I would say is a bigger deal is this, Monty. People are getting really lost, like they always do, in the source of the toxic issue, right? Because what they actually ask is what I think is the most fucking infantile reading of this possible, which goes like this. If you tell someone they are badly behaved, will they just rehabilitate and reform instantly and become better? No. It's not even plausible. That would take years anyway. And then, spoiler, no one's seriously working on this. What they really mean is this, Monty. Here's the translation. Just don't talk shit to Striker again. The other stuff, by the way, it's not even implied that the teammate stuff's why you were benched. It's more like the Striker thing's the straw that broke the camel's back. So you can talk the odd bit of shit. Essentially, I would phrase it this way, mate. From knowing people like Forgiven, Upset, Dardoch, Soaz, right? If you're someone who in any way is going to be spicy or have any sort of like in any way a negative impact in like a VOD review, a team concert, or you're just someone who doesn't tolerate shit, you have very strong boundaries. I would say it this way, Monty. I used to just say this to Forgiven and Simple all the time. Bro, you don't actually have to like transform as a human and become enlightened. You just have to be like 10% less toxic and essentially sometimes even just fake it, you dickhead. Like I even told Simple, you know what's so stupid about you, mate? The word sorry is like the easiest in the world to say. Like, I don't know if you know this, mate, because I actually think he actually has a problem with like I'd call like a post-Soviet Soviet issue, where essentially in their culture, Monty, because it was like totally managed, and if you were the one to blame, you were the one going to a literal gulag. Everyone's whole game was give false info and be like, everything's fine, or it's his fault, or it wasn't me. So I think, unfortunately, that's one of the reasons why they actually have that issue in their culture. So what I would say is this, in the West, mate, you know this living in America, mate, the most annoying thing is how easily people just throw out fucking sorries like it was confetti at a wedding. Like, they'll do something and they don't even mean it. You know they don't, but they go, sorry. And they'll even say it in some fucked up way. Like, that's what I told people, like, forgiving and simple. It's like, bro, the reason everyone thinks you're an irredeemable dickhead is you won't even say the words. You won't. I know it. Listen, I know it's disingenuous. I wouldn't say to do this. This is why I am not. I've even told them this as well because I'm a fucking G. This is why I am not in a team. I am a fucking lone wolf who gets to do whatever he wants and tell everyone to go fuck themselves. You aren't playing StarCraft. You aren't my mate Naniwa. You're in a team game. You have to, even if it's just for the sake of your teammates and coach, sometimes say, sorry, guys, or maybe I spoke hastily. Even if you don't believe it, like, they're going to appreciate that. They'll appreciate even the gesture, as it were. So, spoiler, if you're Adam, read between the lines, mate. Just don't fuck with Striker ever again, motherfucker, because he will literally put you in an ERL bitch. So, first of all, don't ever fuck with him. He made you. And then secondly, basically, he's that Colonel guy in your Elvis twat. People might go, but it was Elvis just singing. Nah, it was that fucking Colonel guy who just knew everything behind him. So anyway, Colonel Parker, I think he was called, right? So what I would say is this, is I think Striker played this masterfully, because I actually think, really, like good. You say, he didn't really gamble much. Like, there's even a world where he could have got more circuit points by coming second, and no one would blame you either way if you lost to G2. I even think there's a world, like I say, where maybe if they got to the final, he even says to Adam, you know, if you're ready to say sorry, I could put you in the final. That would even be gangster right there. What a fucking great learning tool that would be. And then I don't really think that it matters that Adam's a bit of a shitter. Spoiler, think about his public behaviour and then what you've heard privately. So he already did that to Upset. People don't know. Everyone always goes, but he apologised to Upset. Bro, I think last year around Worlds, he brought that topic up again and said something like inappropriate again, implying like it was fucked up or Upset was a dick or something, which is like, I even remember thinking like, bro, you're the one keeping this. You're the dickhead who was horrible to someone's family life, and you're still bringing it up 2 years later. The lack of self-awareness is crazy, mate. And then I'll just say this. If you don't know the way he has flamed me, that's a massive red flag. Because you know my original comment that got Nuke and all them to jump in was like so incredibly tame, Monty. My tweet was basically like, Nook better enjoy this period now. Right. This last year, because eventually like he won't be in a top team anymore. And you'll basically see he's just like a mid-laner. Something along that was like essentially the gist of it. It wasn't even phrased spicy, guys. It wasn't like the ones I do now about the French and Spanish people or Kometo or something. And he went so mad on that. Are you ready for the hilarity of what he responded to me? He said, I was a disgrace to the ecosystem. I need to get out of it. Well, here's the problem, Adam. That's because you don't know the difference between our jobs, you dumb fuck. So my job is I'm a professional entertainer and historian, but those are two different jobs. So in the same way as if someone was a historian, but they also played football semi-professionally, you wouldn't, when they challenged someone in a football match, go, a historian fouling people. You'd understand that's not them being a historian, is it? That's when they're being a footballer. So when I'm on camera like this, my job is to entertain. Well, you might go, you're just flaming people. Yeah, that's part of my job. I'm killing my job. I'm actually fucking doing an awesome job. And you know what else? That's just a persona for the camera. Do you know who I am in private? I'm actually one of the best, most loyal friends and teammates you could ever have. I'm brilliant with my colleagues, mate. You ever see that? You notice how when all these people mob me, my old colleagues and workers don't come out and say, hey, he's a piece of shit. It'll be some guy where it's like, I used to work for like esports and I was like in a Slack channel 700 years ago and he once said boo to a goose. Like, it's never someone who, it's never like actually people, even the people, the joke is, mate, who were like enemies of mine and used to work with me, even they don't come out and go, behind the scenes, he was a total piece of shit. Then no one says, have you ever wondered, guys, why doesn't Frost Gurren just say that? Why doesn't Slasher just say it? They haven't even thought to say it because that's how legit I am. So one, I'm awesome at my job, Adam. No one stops me doing mine. Two, I'm fucking great to my. So I'm nothing like you. The spoiler is this. You're the toxic piece of shit who needs to leave the ecosystem. Except you don't really, mate. All you need to do is just put your dick back in your pants, understand you had a bad day and you raged out, and just fucking say sorry and just play the next play. Because at the end of the day, if we bring it all out of the drama for a second, this is worse for BDS as an actual competitive team. Like, they really probably would be in the final. By the way, when I saw how Mad Lions played G2, this is why I didn't necessarily think G2 just 3-0s BDS. BDS, the real BDS, actually might have been able to make that an interesting series, mate. Like, first of all, I don't think Broken Blade would have been as dominant. I don't think actually, like, mate, G2 looked like they were willing to give 2 games up in that fucking Mad Lions series. So, like, I also think if Adam gets his shit together, he is really good at the game right now, and the fucking team's really good, so just get it all together and fucking play. You don't let this drama bomb go and just move on with your life, mate.
Yeah, and I look, I think this is just a wake-up call. And people, I think my initial reaction, too, was hey, this looks like a very serious time to do this. But when you actually step back and think about the implications of benching him now, they're virtually non-existent. Like, this is actually the best time. Like, honestly, this is the lowest stakes time to do this if you have confidence in your abilities as a coach, which I think Striker absolutely should, because this team is way more than the sum of their parts. And I have to attribute that a lot to the coaching, right? And like you have a viable backup, and you obviously are capable of crafting team strategies to the players you have. So who's to say you couldn't do it with Genax too? Like, I don't think Genax is some sort of irredeemable scrub compared to Adam. Like, they could figure it out on this team.
By the way,
shout out
to the guy in the channel who was like, I wouldn't personally group for giving it. No, why would you? You weren't his friend, didn't know him, and didn't know all the players I just listed, who I not only knew what they did in public and what they did professionally behind the scenes. Some of them I knew as people, and literally they told me the things they thought and did. But I tell you what, you as a fan who saw an interview once, you just speculate what I might have known in reality is true, and just whether that's wrong because you don't want it to be right. So remember, the whole point of this show is we're Wooloo, and we're here to just give you what you want, not in any way give you what you need or the truth. We're just here to reflect back to you your own shitty Zoomer opinion, which is that yes, Fortnite is the best game and Boogie is Jesus / Faker.
Esports Player of the Year, by the way. And the way that they play
That's how dark esports is. So esports is a world in which every year, like it's like some sort of hellscape purgatory. Every year, Riot Games is the publisher of the year, as they do things like have their European final without checks notes, the ability to watch the winning moment. Well, that's one thing interesting. And then also Ashley Kang, female Korean Travis Gafford, as I call her, journalist of the year, of course, over Richard Lewis, over me, someone who does her own job much better without asking fans to outsource the questions to. And then also you're in a scene where who was nominated for Journalist of the Year a year ago or something? It was Wooloo. So a guy who himself said many times, I'm not a journalist, stop saying I'm a journalist, was nominated for journalist, and people went, I think he should win. So that's esports for you. That's esports. Also, I have one line I forgot to say. I can't leave it without the banger, Monte, because I've learned you can't just waste things on tweets. People don't see tweets sometimes. Here's the banger, Monte. The irony of this situation is that Adam is named after the first man, but for Adam to actually fucking make it, he's going to have to first become a man. Not bad.
True.
Not bad.
I love it.
It's true. It is true. Else he'll be struck down by the striker god in this case.
Cast out from paradise, as it were. I think the final point on this is that Striker and Adam played this very well. Adam released an apology, and then Striker, I think...
That's the other thing to say, right, Monte? This is the other reason it's a masterclass from Striker, because he allowed Adam at the end, even if it's not even justified, to get his dignity back, and he even gave him it back as well himself in his statement, didn't he?
Not
it was very well handled, wasn't it?
That he publicly said, oh, well, this fight that we had, it wasn't that bad. And I understand that, competitive people can get heated. And so in a way, he's saying that it's okay. We will have disagreements in the future, but you're still my bitch at the end of the day. You remember that?
Dude, people don't get that. That's the part they don't get. If you read between the lines, it's like Monte says, what he's saying is this: look, Adam, I've gotten my way entirely. In fact, as you notice, I control this whole media circus. I have wrecked you. I have allowed people to know you're wrecked. I have literally let the info get out there, but not from me. And now that you've apologized, you know what? If you stay on side, we'll say it wasn't that big a deal. Yep. Love you. See you on Monday, bitch. Like you said, yeah, perfect. He's actually nailed it, hasn't he? He's nailed it.
You can disagree with me, but only within the parameters that I allow disagreement. Because if you disagree with me in that same way again, you will, in fact, be benched. I love it. It's really nice.
And this is also just confirmed what I actually always thought all along, which is like the most valuable person in BDS. Well, it's now proven because Crowley's not there by AB. It's Striker. It's not any of the fucking players. This is like Ender's game. It's like Striker's game. He's the one who's fucking doing all this. Because that's the other thing, by the way, I'll give this guy mad props for. Bro, he has gotten 2 teams into contender status that don't play even vaguely the same way with 4 of the same players. He's played through fucking ADC and top lane in Europe. Monte, it's the fucking mid lane region. The whole the region for 10 years has been get a stud mid laner, give him the infinite champion pool like Knight and fucking Chovy style, and then make the jungle a gank mid. This guy has done, like we say, the opposite. In fact, I'll repeat what you've said on past episodes. Here's why I'll give Striker insane credit. You know, everyone says the toughest thing about this T1 squad is you can't really play like them. That's the most annoying thing. They put a blueprint down and you can't copy it. He copied it with fucking French players in the West. Like, here's the joke. Adam, that's how I know that fucking Striker is amazing. He took a literal gods player, Zeus, and mimicked it for a mere human, Adam, and made it fucking work. He actually made the counter pick work for you. That works for Zeus because he's actually the best, mate. Like, it works for you because this guy fucking set the team up. Because, yeah, that's the thing people will always miss. It's like Flame told me in Season 8. If you want to be a carry top laner every game, the actual question isn't, can you play carry champions? It's, can your bot lane play in, like, a safe manner so that you can not have to gank bot lane all the time? And if you notice in this team, that's exactly what they did. They set it up for top lane. So, yeah, I think Striker's done a fucking awesome job. And this, by the way, like I say, especially the last statement, PR masterclass, because you've gotten everything you want out of it, and now you even essentially give Adam a way back in. Whereas I'll tell you what, I've seen this in sports, mate. If you know there's a public feud between a star and a coach, the worst thing you can do is it just becomes like a cold war and like tension, and you see them on the bench just not talking. That's like when it actually becomes like the public can take it and run with it. Striker essentially here, like I say, if Adam just behaves now, this never has to be an issue again. It'll never be brought up again. It'll just be happy families from now on. So I think he killed it, mate. I think he actually killed this whole thing. Great job.
Yeah. I think this was actually one of the best ways. The funny thing about Wooloo releasing this after the entire conversation we had is that it's absolutely possible that BDS themselves leaked this to Wooloo and then did the PR to actually like put it.
There's also a world you could say, if you look at the way he phrased that, it actually doesn't then make sense that his website a few hours later would put out that very story. It almost implies one of two things. Either one, Wooloo didn't have the info and it came to him during the series, or two, he put that tweet out, and Cosmophisto's point is like, well, do you just do this because people want to see it? And then he was like, yeah, shit, maybe people do want to see it. And then they went and got the info. So, like, that's why it's so weird a tweet, isn't it? Because what's weird about the tweet is you'd almost think that was kayfabe. Like, what, are you setting it up that you don't have it, but then your site's the one that publishes it? What? That's a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah, or BDS themselves gave him the info or okayed the release of the info so they could do the PR spin.
Seems most likely to me. Come on.
Because like honestly, them releasing that info is actually part of Adam's punishment. And then they just make him feel good. So if they strategically released that without telling Adam that they were doing that and then came out publicly to defend him,
Monte,
pretty good.
I'll, for one of the only times ever, actually use this metaphor correctly. That makes BDS fucking pimps. Because if you know how a pimp works, yes, of course, he does that part where he goes like, bitch, where my money? But then afterwards he goes, oh, I'm sorry, baby. I don't want to have to do that to you. You know daddy loves you. Come on. Let's have a drink. Let's have a better day. Like, they always do the like cult leader thing where it's like they punish you, but then they bring you back with the love and the embrace so that then you're bonded to them, like trauma bonded, aren't you? So in this analogy, like, I totally think that's what happened there, Monty. It's like this, put it this way, if it didn't come from the BDS org, then you've accidentally benefited from what would have been the most cleverly coordinated media campaign I've seen in years. Like, if I were you, by the way, don't ever take credit publicly. Maybe in a few years, just do something like send me a DM of like a wink, like that's all I need to say. You know, like Sean Pegg, like from fucking Hot Fuzz or something. You know,
winky
do that.
Face.
Send that. That's all I need. A little winky face. Exactly.
Yeah, it's too funny. Well, in any case, I hope this works because obviously the takeaway here is not that we want Adam to leave the scene.
Like an hour on that drama. Whatever, it's a classic. To be fair, it's classic.
Look, it was the classic, but also it's interesting, and also it was a big deal in the playoffs.
Oh, it was.
Because
yeah.
I mean, it affected the narratives. Like, let's be honest, it allowed Mad Lions Koi to get to the finals.
Oh, it did. Yes. Yeah. By the way, before we get into that, though, I actually want to tell you something. Since it is roughly 10 years since we started this show, I've got a piece of info for you that you will enjoy. Because you know, one of the reasons I actually despise the very Wooloo thinking of like what you do is you cynically focus group. Like, what does my audience want? I'll just cynically give them exactly what they ask for instead of, you know, like an artist producing and expressing yourself authentically and then seeing if there is an audience and then seeing if you can cultivate that when they care about what you do, right? Which is the way legit artist does it, right? this is actually a piece of info for you. You know, this show is the most successful esports podcast ever, and it's lasted 10 years and tens of millions of views and all that shit, right? And still going strong now. We're still fucking killing it to this day. Still got loads of viewers now and mega average view times that never dropped off, all that shit, even when Monte took a break for like 2 years, right? What people wouldn't know is this, Monte, is if I listened to the advice of people like Wooloo and the people who cultivate Wooloo's mentality, this show wouldn't exist and would never be here. And here's why. Because when I told On Gamers I was going to do this show, I was given the most dumb advice ever that everyone at the time thought made sense. If when you hear it, you'll immediately recognize it, Monte. It went like this, right? Here, because they were from the media landscape. They were like from CBS, mate. They were people who'd worked like, the joke is my cameraman and the people helping me with the show and the producer. They were like real world people who worked in LA, like doing fucking jobs like on TV and stuff. So they told me, right, because they were used to the TV world, they were like, here's the parameters. What you do is it's 1 hour exactly before the show, every 10 minutes, topic change, and you give your guests the topic list before and you ask them, what are a couple of your angles? And what you do is you set the angle up a bit like, you know, someone would have like a Jimmy Fallon or something like that. You go, hey, so I heard you recently you were in Arizona, right? And then they're like, that funny you should say that because my bloody cousin lives in a trailer and you wouldn't believe it. And it's like, mate, that's canned material. Like he told you that. That's not an authentic conversation. So basically, and the reason I was told I must do all this, Monte, is I was told two things. One, people in esports have no attention span and they won't watch things for hours. And two, they hate when you have like a lot of digressions and tangents and you've got to stay really tight and on target. Now, if you don't get it, guys, this wasn't actually a conscious decision, but essentially I did the opposite of every parameter I was given and I had checks notes. The most successful podcast ever. Because basically what they didn't understand at the time, I'll give them credit for, is this was 2014. What they didn't understand was, we're doing it like Joe Rogan, mate. We just talk about whatever we want, whenever we want, for however many hours it lasts, and then we turn the fucking stream off. Like, if people don't know, if you think any of the shit I said earlier was funny, it's all off the fucking dome. We're not preparing this shit. We're not like a script meeting and writer's room. We're just doing it now.
I'll tell you a funny anecdote from when I was working on Overwatch League. So one of the many ways in which Overwatch League spent way too much fucking money, but one way that I really appreciated that they spent way too much fucking money was that they started basically offering casters like coaching sessions, right? With like very legit, very legit on-camera personalities, including we had a guy who spent like a decade or two coaching ESPN personalities. That was very interesting feedback. Okay. But one of the sessions that we had, so they brought in a guy who is a literal Super Bowl executive producer, the top producer of the Super Bowl, as a consultant to come in to consult on production. Okay, so he's like walking around the studio and he starts doing meetings with the casters. And so Doa and I are having a meeting with him and he's like, you guys are great. And we're like, well, you know, we wish we could have had these things. You know, we start listing off like production assets and everything that we would like to have to make our cast better. And he's like, wait, you don't have any of these things? And you guys are doing this right now? Yes. And it's all off the cuff and off of your own research? And he's like, excuse me, I am going to go talk to production now. And he just went and reamed out production. He was like, I have no feedback for you. You guys are fucking amazing. And because he's used to working with talent that have had, they're spoon-fed. Even the professionals that are making literally $10 million a year casting the NFL. And the thing that I realized, and like this is a core principle of Last Free Nation, guys, is that the thing that Thorin was advised to do is expensive because you need to have producers who come and like write down all of the notes and like prepare the guests and everything like that, get everything ready for the show. We don't need that. And one of the very special skills of not just myself and Thorin, but our partners on LFN, whether they're streamers or whether they're esports casters, is that we have been trained through the brutal realities of esports to speak unscripted and be entertaining and informative for hours and hours and hours of pauses and downtime and everything out there. And so I said to myself, what if we just made a podcast company that could cut costs that other podcasts have because we just rely on our talent to be talented? And we just give them the money and the equity instead. Like, that's the core concept of LFN. And that's why I believe we can not only do esports, but we started to do the culture content and the traditional sports content too, because we have a skill set that is unlike other commentators in other sports who are just hand-fed and like controlled throughout that entire broadcast. And they are actually incapable of doing what we do. Actually incapable of it. So I agree is the answer. And I've been told as much by sports professionals.
Yeah, but the problem is, Monte, you're a stinky right-wing chud. I don't know why, by the way. Nothing about your personality or anything about your persona has ever been vaguely right-wing or conservative. I don't want to get myself. I know. If you don't know Monte is actually the definition of a classical liberal, you fucking idiot.
Yes,
you don't know
exactly.
And your problem is you doomed yourself because esports is all about optics. Greenwall, shout out. Because basically, all people care about is names, right? So you made a company called Last Free Nation, which sounds so evil, said someone who works in a game where literally skin sales in that game could be used and maybe are used by the CCCP to be like, actually, build another camp in that autonomous zone. I love Seraphine too. Great. And then if not, then they go, oh, I'm getting tired of working for China. I think I'll take a break and work for Saudi Arabia, who are killing people at the border and putting journalists in prison. Oh, wait a minute. Monte called his company Last Free Nation. Now, Monte, does that have any place in esports? Like, hell, guys. And eventually, it's getting too far. It's too far, mate. It's too far.
If you think we're exaggerating, you can look this up. Right. You can look this up. Like, the Tencent is basically been tithed by the Chinese government as part of like a system to put. Like, they basically told a bunch of the biggest companies, like, give us money for the prosperity and the greater good of China. So, yes, there actually is now a direct line from Riot's profits to Tencent's profits to them just paying the Chinese government. So it's not really obfuscated anymore. It's just sitting there. But yeah, I mean, I think the whole thing is ridiculous because to your point, I basically am a classical liberal. And I'm quite moderate politically, so I'm not really sure where all of this comes from. But, yeah, I think
before we end the Adam thing though, I have something to say, Monte, which is I want to talk about the factor that has made me learn something about League of Legends from the Adam situation. So that's your cue there. So basically, if you are someone who wants a quick solution, then Factor is for you. Because you know what? It can only take a couple of minutes to make the life-changing decision that benefits you right now, just like when BDS benched Adam, because it was just the right thing for their health in that moment. Only took a couple of minutes, and they had an alternative available. It's less expensive when you use Factor than cooking and buying the things yourself, just like it was less expensive for BDS to just bench Adam and not deal with his BS. Also, if you think Adam, with that context of what he said about Upset's wife and then repeated jabs in it over the years, I mean, it's just so delicious. Oh, it's so fucking rich, isn't it? What he did, the behavior, the hypocrisy. I mean, it's almost like a gourmet meal. Speaking of which, actually, Factor has their own Gourmet Plus line, which has fast, upscale options available at all times. If you have to bench some idiot like Adam, yeah, obviously you're not going to have a lot of time to prepare, right? Well, good news is Factor needs no prep. It's 100% ready. And all you have to do is, just like Adam, once it gets heated, then it gets heated. Actually, it would be the word, but you get the point there. So basically, go to factormeals.com/LFN50 for 50% off. That's right. Since people like Adam are slow learners and have to be told something many times before it sinks in, Adam, that's factormeals.com/cutting something, slashing it in half like your ego and your future, /LFN50 for how much? 50% off.
And that's right, Thorin. Not only that, but it's not an upgrade. It's an upgrade to your meal, unlike Gen X. You're not bringing in some kind of like tier 2. This will actually enhance your culinary performance overall. So slightly different, but better. Well, thank you for that. Beautifully done, Thorin. Yeah. So let's talk about the finals, I guess. And we can talk about Fnatic. Do you want to touch on Fnatic briefly and their surprising and shocking exit?
You know what? All I'll say is this, Monte. Right, being as I did do things like pick fucking, I don't know, I think I had Carmine Corp second or third in my list. I had like fucking Vitality quite high up. I had Team Heretics maybe for most of the split as my second mistake. I won't say that I can claim like, I bloody told you, because I got it wrong on most of the split, right? But I will say this, if people wonder why I've never gotten on that train, you'll notice on all the episodes, mate, even if I said like Fnatic are going to come third or they could battle with BDS for second, it was always like with a sort of dismay in my voice. And I know people don't get that because they're like, well, what? They've kept most of the team and it was a top team in summer last year at the season finals, and like, aren't they good? Shouldn't you be cheering for them? This is why I've never been in on this team, mate, because bro, they should have beaten like the fucking normal Mad Lions. Like, the idea this team can lose a best of 5 to how? Like, here's the problem I have. I know how Mad Lions is a better actual team and the concept of team, like how they play. But bro, the Fnatic players should be winning this series all day long. Their player strength they have, it can be awesome. And I have to say, it all comes back to the one factor I always hinge it on, mate. You can have your issues about like Oscarden maybe wasn't as strong towards the end of the split. How did Noah play? Maybe he was better towards the end, but he wasn't good in the rest. No, here's my biggest problem. Their main star player is Humanoid, and he does this all the time, mate. Every time he has that pop-off game, 1 in every 4 games, we all go, he's back, Humanoid, baby, yeah, Marek Brazda, all the memes, fucking, he's a Carl, he's there. I'll tell you what though, where the fuck ever he is in game 5? Where is he ever since Mad Lions ended when it's the important game? Nowhere to be fucking found, mate. And he disappeared again in this series. Like, I am actually shocked Fnatic lost this one. I'm not going to flame them super hard, but I just think it's so underwhelming. Like, here's the thing. It's one thing if they just came third. How they came fourth, like, you almost had to try this split. Like, I'm shocked that Fnatic collapsed like that. It was really disappointing. This was one of the worst players of the whole fucking year, I feel like. It's terrible.
I mean, they also really struggled, from kind of like dumb outlier things, like the fact that they got completely wrecked at level 1 in game number 3.
Oh, that was hilarious.
It was very funny. Like, it was like a 10-man in the top lane. And like, look, it's a best of 5, so teams do let shit like that in best of 5s because each individual game matters less, right? And you can kind of like steal a win sometimes. And I think they did a pretty good job of battling back in spite of the fucking disastrous circumstances that started that game. Not only that, but I think they played pretty well in game number 4 overall. But if we go to game number 5, this is, I'm just going to rant for a second about something that's been bothering me globally in League of Legends right now, is we have this meta where there are a lot of engaged champions being banned. So, it's either engage AD carries, that have an ult that can engage, like Ashe, obviously, or Kalista, or Varus, for example. And we also see junglers that can engage being banned out or taken away early. So, like, obviously, Maokai is the most important one, but to a lesser degree like Sejuani. We've seen Zac now come into the meta as a flex pick, particularly in Europe. But one of the issues that I think has plagued a lot of teams and plagued Fnatic in this final game is that many teams are playing compositions that lack a form of primary engage. And you can do that, but it often requires you to either win lanes super hard and snowball, or, which also results in the second thing that I'm going to talk about right now, or you have to be on objectives first, like a dragon or a baron, and you have to maintain vision control, so the other team is forced to play into you, right? And to a degree, I think that when we look at Fnatic's composition, they have Ezreal, Karma into Senna, Maokai. Ezreal, Karma, clearly going to push. This is one of the best pushing lanes in the game. We saw it a lot in the last couple of years as a Caitlyn Lux counter into that pressure that duo creates. You have a Tristana, very good at pushing, especially early, in the game, in the mid lane. We often see that champion banned out. They get the Gwen in the top side as a counter pick to Cassante. And you have a Poppy, who is great, by the way, at diving all of these lanes that are going to be pushed up. So what this is a very hard pressure win lane. Let's get some early dragon stacks. Hey, maybe if we can push a bot side, we can get the first 2 Drakes. Oh, okay. Well, then now we can say, we're going to have priority. Their mid and bot outer turrets are going to be gone. We can ward up the jungle. Now they're going to have to play into us for the next 2 Drakes. We get Soul. We can kind of snowball this game out. Now the problem is that when you fumble it, like we saw Humanoid just randomly dying in the mid lane, it relieves that pressure, and the other team has an opportunity to maybe get a Drake and then slow down the pace of the game.
This is just a pet peeve of mine, but I actually do fucking lose my shit when people play Tristana and die by going in or get fucked up by going in. It's like, bro, the reason Reckless played it his whole career is to get out, you fucking idiot. You use it to not die. It's like Ezreal's that just go in and die, mate. It's like, bro, the E gets you out. You fucking play against the champion. You'll realize what a nightmare it is, because that's one of the problems. He can be good on that champion, but he's trash at that, mate. So many times he goes in, it's stupid.
Yeah, and like he shouldn't have died, obviously, in the mid lane.
Yes.
Like he shouldn't have died, period.
Yes.
And that did kind of relieve the pressure.
5 with this comp, like you're saying, like, bro, that's the one win condition for you, Humanoid, is just stay alive in lane, basically. Like, come on.
So like I do like the draft in that they drafted themselves a really powerful dive jungler with a lot of pressing lanes. Now the issue with that is, like, once you start to lose control of objectives or you make mistakes, the punish is really strong, and you just don't have tools to engage in the mid lane game. If you guys want to see actually a hilarious example of what I'm talking about when I say no primary engage compositions, like, look at the game 3 this last week between Guangdong Freaks and Fear X. Just watch it. It is fucking so funny, guys. Like, they're both mid lane outer turrets are up until 28 minutes into the game. Neither team can do anything on the map because neither team is actually capable of pulling the trigger. And when I say primary engage, I mean like Maokai. Like, these are non-committal forms of engage. Maokai ult, because you don't have to go in, right? So there's non-committal primary engage. Maokai ult, Sejuani ults, Vi ults, Nautilus ult or Nautilus hook, Ashe ults. Then there's like, so there's also like committal forms of engage. So these are ones where, like, once you're in, you're in. So it's like Rel or Alistair engages, right? These kind of engages, or Vi engage, right? You have to commit to the fight. Like, once you go in, there's no getting out of that situation. Azir shuffle potentially. But Azir shuffle is dependent on factors. Like, you can't always just go in there. Like, if there's a Talia, it becomes really hard, obviously. So I consider when there are other factors at play, like, let's say Gnar ult. I would not consider that a form of primary engage. Now, Zac leaping in and ulting, primary form of engage, right? So, a follow-up for, like, a secondary form of engage might be tidal wave, right? Like, once your team's in, that's when the tidal wave comes through. Or Renata Glass Skulls, like hostile takeover. That would be a form of potentially secondary engage. And we see Karma, and like Karma speed is kind of easily kited out. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of factors that go into play, but when you don't have a form of primary engage, it becomes really hard if you lose objective priority to actually muscle in on your opponent and take a fight on your terms, because you just get kited, right? Or you actually just can't get in on them because anytime you walk forward, they just hit you with a Maokai ult, right? Or a Vi ult, and they get priority targets. So it becomes, I think, really difficult to play the game. And a lot of teams these days are actually just playing compositions that lack entirely a form of primary engage. And that, to me, is a very risky proposition. And we kind of saw it here. So when Fnatic didn't kind of get the lane snowball as much as they wanted, there's also going to be talk about their dumb macro. Yes, I mean, they let an Azir with fucking Nashor's Tooth and Rabadon's Death Cap split push against them. There's a reason why Chovy likes this champion, guys. It's because Azir is actually an extremely good split pusher. And Frescovi did a good job with that. Like, there's also the fact that they were like taking enemy blue buff while he was killing their inhib turrets. They literally traded the game for Baron Scuttle Crab and enemy blue. Like, this is obviously extremely dumb macro decisions that they were making, but I think it's easy to criticize that. But the thing that it's a little bit harder, like, it's harder to see, is that you have to ask yourself, how do they engage? How do they fucking stop this from happening? Like, it's very, very hard when you're trying to play into Vi, Azir, and Maokai to engage even if you have that Karma and the Gwen, like Karma's great at speeding up Gwen and getting Gwen into the back line, but if Gwen's just getting kited, like it becomes super, super difficult to do that. Compile on that the mechanical mistakes, like, you know, Noah made a positional error where he thought that Gwen Shroud would block Mykles. That's not the way Gwen Shroud route works. Noah found that out the really hard way, that if Gwen stands in front of you and Gwen is immune,
of course,
Gwen does not block Mykles. And so you get snared. And he had already like E'd forward in that fight. So he's just fucked. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He dies, you know, the game is over. So it was a sloppy game from Fnatic. It was a tragic mid lane loss. Like, when you play these full press compositions, you have to play them really snowbally. And if the snowball fails to emerge, then you have this occur. So like, I don't know. I'm just not, but my point of this is like, I'm not a fan of all of these compositions that are popping up. And the reason why is because a lot of the meta engaged champions are being banned. And a lot of the other priority meta champions like Karma, you know, Cassante, they do not actually have primary engage. And Cassante is not primary engage, guys. Let me be very clear about this. He isolates a target after you've engaged, or he flanks and isolates a target, and he can clean up fights. He's a great janitor, but he is not a form of primary engage to start a team fight. He is not. It's not the way he's played professionally. It's not the way his kit works. You get mad because once he starts once he goes all out, then he finds a target, kills them, and then just kills everybody else one by one on the team. So, but he doesn't start the fight. He just ends it. You know, that's how it goes. And he's very good in lane, obviously. So, yeah, I think like this is, it's really disappointing. Like, I think Fnatic didn't come through, obviously, when it really mattered. And we expected better from them. There was some level 1 shenanigans that got them behind, but game 5 was depressing, to your point. And like, Humanoid didn't do his job, and the team had horrible macro. But the comp also didn't allow them to fight back very effectively if they didn't snowball in the early game. And I think that point is worth mentioning, is that when you opt into that style, you better be fucking winning early. You better be taking turrets. You better be stacking those drakes, because if you're not, that other composition is simply going to outscale you, and they are going to have so much more versatility in terms of dictating fights on their own terms. And that is huge.
I also think when you now look in hindsight, it makes sense why Mad Lions was able to actually edge out Fnatic. Because if you look, first of all, one thing I'll give mad props to Mad Lions for is I actually think they played better in this lower bracket than they have the whole fucking split. Like, they look like they got better each series that was going on. So one of the interesting things about their team, Monte, is I've almost never seen a team like this. They're almost on some like rogue time shit. They're actually sort of decent early, better than you expect. In the middles where it can go fucking wrong, they sometimes do some weird shit there. But actually the late game macro is pretty good, actually. Like, especially for so many rookies. Like, the amount of times, like, whereas Fnatic have actually been quite poor in that area, the amount of times I've seen them late in a game just make the right move or decisive play and outplay some like way more veteran team with bigger name players. And then I'll even say I actually think even some of the players I've critiqued, Monte, like I've most of the split, I've thought the Frescawi guy was just nothing mid. He's actually played pretty well in some of these playoff series, mate. He's had some big games. So fair play, they've got it all together.
Yeah, look, I think Frescovi has been, like, his Gragas game was particularly good. That he played in game 3 versus Fnatic. Like, he's had some good Talia performances. He's not my favorite player on this team, obviously.
Obviously,
like,
Mirwin.
I mean, Mirwin and Alvaro are very legit players, and it's very exciting to see.
Just the champion pull the Mirwin guy has is so fucking dope. Like, that's not a joke. He really does play that Varus, and he's fucking really good on it. It's actually fucking baller in it.
Yeah.
Because, by the way, it's like the Adam thing earlier. When someone has a champion pull like that, mate, it's not him just doing it on his own. The team and the coach have to be accounting for it and building the comps to let it work. Like, that actually shows he's integrated into his team. He's not just some wild character doing what he wants. Like, they're making those fucking picks work.
Yeah. And they, yeah, like you said, they're playing the champion pool extremely effectively around his style. And that's great. I mean, it was even surprising that he was willing to pull out the Yasuo, which he hasn't pulled out in LEC yet, in the first game of the finals. And again,
gangsters. Think about that in game 1 of the final against G2 when you're a fucking rookie. Just bring me the Yasuo and game on. What are you talking? That's like how you like tilt yourself off the face. This guy's got balls, mate. He has balls.
I mean, we can switch to the Mad Lions G2 series now, because that game 1 was really great, guys. I thoroughly enjoyed that game 1. Credit to Melzet, by the way. I know we talked a lot about Striker, and like obviously there were questions about replacing Mac. But Melzet, I mean, you look at this draft. This was one of the most fun drafts I have seen in a while. Like, G2 has had some fucking banger drafts throughout this playoffs, but the way that Mad Lions Koi played the red side in the draft and just got the better of G2 was really exciting to watch. Because I don't think, if I had to guess, Thorin, I don't think that Broken Blade practiced Akali, and I don't think that Caps practiced Twisted Fate. Just watching that game, I have a feeling that maybe they weren't the most ready for what was going on in this draft.
Take the Zach, but just put on your jungle, wasn't it? It's like, okay, we're taking your pick, Broken Blade, but we don't have to ban it. That was clever, I thought, yeah.
Yeah, so in the first 4 picks on red side, they had Zach and Rel. So you don't know whether Zach is top or jungle, or Rel is support or jungle. So you're kind of just sitting there, and you want the Twisted Fate, right? And so, okay, like, you see what's coming out of this draft. You don't want to play Twisted Fate into Orianna. That's not a great matchup for TF. And so you want to kind of to play him in the top side. I don't know what the Zach TF matchup is like, but I would think it's probably okay, at least for Twisted Fate. But what was the real masterstroke here is like, so when you see the TF coming in, right, and they finish their draft by having this flexibility in the way that you've picked your champions, by picking the Yasuo into the top lane, it basically means you cannot play the Twisted Fate in that lane, because Yasuo will just win wall, pick a card, and then all in you. So you really get mega fucked, because Windwall just blocks all of his abilities, and he can just block your CC, dash through a minion wave, and just trade extremely effectively with you, right? He, as we saw later in this game, you can win wall, pick a card at melee range, basically. Like, so he can't do anything. It's a terrible matchup. So then you're dealing with a scenario, well, now we have to play fucking Akali. I guess we have to play at topside. That's not an awesome matchup for Akali either. And so then we have to play Twisted Fate into Orianna. When you see pick a card, Orianna just shields herself, and that's it. Right? So it's not an awesome matchup for Twisted Fate. So this is a really great draft where they forced G2 into a really uncomfortable situation. And Thorin, to Melzet's credit, how often do we see Dylan Falco get like...
Almost never. In an LEC finals. This is when he... Like, the joke is that might be the first guy ever, except when he had Reckless, to fucking be able to get this guy in the draft. It was ridiculous, wasn't it?
Yeah, and by the way,
and also even more gangster, mate, they then won the game. Yeah. That's why it actually wants mad hype. You're like, holy shit, is this possible? Is this going to be like this the whole way? Sadly,
and won the game very convincingly too. And not only that, Thorin, but it's not like, oh well, he got, nicely done, Mad Lions Koi. You got some cool lane matchups, like you got a bunch of winning lanes because of your cleverness in the draft. It's not just that the Yasuo was such a good pick there. It's the fact that look at what Yasuo was paired with. Look what can trigger Yasuo's ult. Yes. Orianna ult, Zac ult, Rel engage. Like, he has so many ways to get multi-man ults in this situation.
Dude, even when if the fucking ADC ults, then you can just do all your ult on them as well. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. Like, everything just helps him get help, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's mad.
So basically, it's like mad AoE knockups or knockbacks that trigger Yasuo ult. So, by the way, if you group any team fight, you're going to get at least a probably 2-3 player AoE CC that's going to trigger a Yasuo ult. So that's great for you right there. How does Akali live in Shroud, Thorin? There's like fucking tornadoes going through there. There's shockwaves going through there. Chain of Corruption can be shot in there. Rel engage can go in there. Yep. Zac engage can go in there. How do you stay alive if you're Akali? There is no hiding because these are all untargeted CC abilities. So Akali's going to have a massive problem. And I do want to give some credit to G2 because in this game, they really fucked up with the first TF ult by diving too far. Because remember, TF is actually AP in this game, not AD, like we've seen it previously in the playoffs.
The OP one, yeah.
And he's like at level 6, and they're trying to get Supa, and like Caps appears, and he like throws a card out and like throws the wild cards, and it does no damage. And I look at his items, and he's got like a fucking Doran's ring and a ruby crystal and a sapphire crystal because he's building Rod of Ages. And I'm just like, what did you think you were gonna like 1v1 this guy? Like, no, you're not gonna do that. And then they all die, get a huge deficit. But this is also where G2 is really good, guys, because in spite of G2 being so far behind, they were still running this composition. This is a pick comp. The only way G2 wins this game is by picking people off with Twisted Fate, Nautilus, and Vi before they can group up, because they cannot win a front-to-back team fight. Let me be very clear. They cannot win that. That is impossible compositionally between these two teams. So they actually did do a very good job of intercepting members of Mad Lions Koi. You also get to see why Mad Lions Koi is a rookie team. Because one of the funniest things I thought, Thorin, about this game was a way they almost lost it was that they were sieging tier 1 in the mid lane, and Supa walks up to this turret because they're like, oh, we're so clever. El Yo-Yo is going to be in their raptor pit, and when they come, we will spring the engage trap on them. But the funny thing, Thorin, is they fucking had Twisted Fate. So all Caps did was press R, reveal their trap, teleport in, kill Supa before they could engage, and it nearly cost them the game. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. And even funnier, Thorin, the very next game, they try and run that trap again. And they also, at that time, they actually do lose the game from because G2's like, we know they're there. They were there in the exact same place in the last game, also with the Zac. And so they just killed them. So, maybe the team composition and strengths really aren't fully drilled into Mad Lions yet, which is understandable, right? One of G2's specialties is playing to their team composition's win condition, doing the creative shot calling. And that versatility just wasn't there when we saw the same thing from Mad Lions. So they had a good showing, particularly game 1. You still got to see the flaws. G2, I think, fought back about as well as you could possibly ask for, given the deficit and the win conditions of their composition. Playing a pick comp from a massive deficit is one of the hardest things to do in League of Legends, because you have no map control. So if you're able to almost kind of get back into it like G2 did, that's very impressive.
By the way, later in the series, I forget which game, might even be game 4, I forget. There was a game where, it was the one where MykX kept inting the game, right? But someone made a point on Reddit, and I actually think it's such a banger point, mate. I thought I'd save it for you. They said, because it's kind of true, it's almost though, the famous thing, I can't remember who it was who invented that concept. Was it actually Dom who invented the concept of the positive inter, who gave that label? I forget. But basically, it's the idea that you have players who sort of make action happen. Classically, Hylissang was this player, obviously. And even though you int, it's positive in the sense either you needed to force a moment in the game, or it makes the actual enemy sometimes tunnel on you, right? The joke is, it's like when Mickey plays Nautilus, he actually does mind game the other team. This is my edition of, I'll give a better characterization than this comment did. Essentially, his joke is he becomes the laser pointer to the cats, because what happens is, cause he ints a couple of times, like a solo queue game, they all get horny, if we see the support, it's a free kill. And then the joke is, it just makes the opponent go in and give you chances to win the game if you're G2. It actually is it's almost part of me wants to believe that is what he's doing consciously. But I will say, MykX is so legit. He is one of those players privately, Monte, that has told me that casters and analysts do actually even overrate what he does, and that he says he has watched analysts and people do VOD reviews and be genius by Mickey. Look at the way he did this base thing. He knew he could get a cheater recall off and he could come back with these, and he's I didn't do that at all. I had nothing to do on the map, so I was I'll just go back to base actually. And so the problem is none of these guys really are 700 IQ. They're just really good players, guys. They just play off instinct. So it just happens to work out in his favor if he hits. That's all it is. I wish it was true though that it was planned as some master stroke,
Well, it's all the old Moscow 5 stories over and over again. It's
exactly.
No, we just hated each other,
Yes, because that was basically what he told me, is that people would be going way too deep, and he obviously knew this matchup well. He's I didn't know that at all. I just fucking picked the champions played.
It was M5's genius was actually just a bunch of Russians punching each other in the face and getting angry at each other and all doing their own thing that worked out randomly for some reason.
Yes.
It's too funny. But yeah, look, G2 wins. Broken Blade has like a fucking mega series, guys. This is kind of.
Did you see, Monte? There was a very interesting thing he said after the final. Did everyone see this? He actually acknowledged himself. He thanked Alfari and said Alfari had been helping him, like almost like positional coaching him with like matchups and stuff. That was a very interesting thing to reveal after you've won the split, isn't it? I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think, and people say like, oh, G2 isn't that good. Guys, G2 is a very good team. G2 is a very good team.
Yeah, especially by the end, they looked up. Yeah,
and the complaints that I hear, like, oh, you know, what about Broken Blade and Yike at international competitions? I keep saying this, but like Broken Blade was their best performing player at MSI last year. That's not a controversial statement. He looked like shit going into MSI and then actually had a good MSI. And Yike is a young player, but now has
2 tournaments, for fuck's sake. It's only his second year, guys. Give him a chance.
So it's only his second year, and also, like, you know, there's an argument that he was MVP of this series.
Pretty good, yeah.
He was great too. We see that versatility with him. So you know, it's a very well coached team. The individual players are good. Can they hold up internationally? Look, I think that this team can still take games off of very good Asian teams and can take series off of lower, kind of like, you know, 4th seed, 3rd seed Asian teams. I do think they are that good. That's why I put them 10th on my power rankings. Ripped. And
I'll just say this. This is why I always told Dom this angle that people never truly understand. This is why, in his own way, Perks was the ultimate gangster GM of Europe, because, you know, he was like the secret GM of G2. Because I always thought his most genius move ever, Monte, if you think about how history and narratives work, is at the time when Caps had ascended and was on the rival team Fnatic and was probably now, remember at that point, Perks had his 4 titles, but it's probably going to end now. This fucking Caps guy's going to run the table and I'm going to come 2nd or 3rd. Maybe I nick the odd one from him and suddenly I'll have my 4. But you know what? If this goes like this, he's won 2 in Fnatic already. Fucking like 3 or 4 years, he's going to have 6, isn't he? He's going to be ahead of me. What if I recruit him, play with him, and we get to share each of the titles during part of his prime? And even though now Caps like now will have catched up in terms of splits, it took like 3 or 4 extra years. That's gangster, mate. Where you actually get the guy who would like essentially instead of losing 1v1, you just get to like draft like NASCAR style behind his resume the whole way. And then it's only now years later, and when Perks has done nothing, that finally Caps took over in terms of resume. Like that's actually like genius, because you know there's a concept that goes in sports now, which is true, by the way, that like it's not even you just play directly against your opponent. Now they're all doing all this shit in media where they all like push narratives and have their guy and they just like try and control the like famously people say the reason that Last Dance documentary was made, Monte, is because that was like supposedly for real. The story goes that when LeBron won that title over the Warriors and everyone was like, what an insane accomplishment, like he beat the best team ever or whatever, supposedly Michael Jordan just sort of told his guy like, yeah, get working on that fucking documentary actually, because people were finally saying like he might be the greatest basketball ever. And that's like all Michael Jordan, and he hits like activate sleeper agent Last Dance, like, you know, go like it was like that. So like the joke is it's like Perks did that. He saw the future and he was like, you know what, I don't want to be like 10 titles behind that, let me get 4 of those. I'll share those. I think that's gangster.
What still blows my mind about the Last Dance is that they were just sitting on all of that footage for that's like wild, isn't it, 20 because you know what I mean? Years.
When I even heard that concept, I thought, oh, it's going to be all like scuffed, like, you know, like a bit of thing from a crowd, or, you know, someone had like a tiny bit from an interview. The joke is you watch it and you're like, bro, you had the most insane behind the scenes access of everything for like 20 plus years. What were you waiting for? This could have been blockbuster at any time in history, couldn't it? Like if this came out in, like, by the way, if this even came out after Michael Jordan retired, we'd have all watched it. It'd been insane, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It was really on it at all.
That's wild.
I'm thinking how long the series was. That's implied they had loads probably hit the cutting room floor. Like that was fucking amazing, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
I mean, I'm sure there was some extra spicy stuff in there that wasn't shared as well. Probably.
Or maybe if you think of the timing, that's just when tech solutions became available to fake history. Ooh, but this isn't that sort of a stream, guys. It's League of Legends. So keep moving on. Keep moving on.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about LCK this week. Because again, guys, we didn't have LCS to discuss because it wasn't on. And LPL was also on break. Although, Thorin, shout out to my power rankings, because I had a bunch of T1 fans saying, Monte, why is BLG over T1? Even after T1 literally lost to Gen G. So like I put them. So here's
I handle this. Here's what I can't handle. It goes like this. When T1 wins, Monte, if you said they won't win, you are wrong. You must acknowledge that. And then thirdly, you must apologize. But when T1 loses and you say they'll lose, they go, don't say they lost. They still should have won. And you are wrong anyway. It's like, what? I don't know about you guys, but when I know the casino rigs the game, I stop playing. I don't go, let me get more money. Like, I just stop giving a fuck at that point in time. What are we doing here?
Hold on.
Game's stupid.
The logic is also hilarious because they're like, T1 clapped all of those Chinese teams at Worlds, ignoring the fact that BLG
different team,
now,
of course. Yeah, I know.
The BLG now has Knights. That's a pretty substantial difference, one might say. Knight is.
Well, you know what's funny about that, Monte? If you can use that logic, are you ready for my logic? I'll spin back on you. If you're allowed to remove the mid laner, then I can talk about a whole bunch of LCK teams clapping T1 last turn summer.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're allowed to remove the mid laner, fucking hell. Self-awareness, guys.
So I have to acknowledge that because T1 beat BLG at Worlds, T1 is currently the better team, in spite of the fact that T1 lost to BLG at MSI and then spent
no less. Yeah.
And spent the entire year, by the way, T1 spent the entire year being the second best Korean team. So I just ignore everything that happened previous to Worlds. I ignore the fact that BLG has Knight now. I ignore the fact that T1 lost to Gen G now, despite the fact that I put Gen G below T1 on the rankings because Gen G lost to KT, right? But of course, now I'm going to eat shit because while we were recording this, BLG just got blown the fuck out by IG. So now I just look dumb.
No, because here's the thing, Monte. It's the fact it's IG that saves you. And here's why. Because anyone who watches the LPL knows there's a type of result that genuinely we just ignore because it's an outlier. Which is, it's not that they lost to top esports, like another rival, right? It's always the dominant team in China always loses one series minimum to complete nobody shitters. That's even why, spoiler, all I'll say again is if someone's a fan of like Iron Wolves in the Polish league, I'm kind of suspicious about any weird results involving Chinese players and teams because, spoiler, you know how this works, Monte. The number one time to throw a game for match fixing would be when your team should never lose and has insane odds. That's literally the scenario you are selected for. But anyway, I'll just say on this show, to make it not controversial, I'll just say this. I think it's a factor of the fact that you play so many best of threes and that essentially because you play each team once, you're going to get, like in Korean Brood War, you're going to get a random team that'll snipe you. They'll just have the right angle, the right player, they'll catch you on a bad day, and there'll always be that one upset. So the difference is, here's what I find whack about that. The IG one you can just dismiss. Who gives a fuck? The difference is T1 just straight up in a massive game lost to Gen G, where they definitely would try harder and wanted to win that game. Like, even though I'm sort of saying you lost to a better team, the circumstances in some ways are worse for you, I actually think. I think you can put aside the IG result. That happens every split, guys. Come on.
Also, people will point out the fact that IG is actually like second place in LPL. Well, it's strength of schedule, guys. They played. Three of their wins are against IG, Rare Adam, and Thunder Talk. Three of the bottom four teams in the league. They got clapped by NIP, and then they beat RNG 2-1. So nobody, even though they were 4-1 coming into today, nobody thought they were going to beat BLG.
And you think that the standings of the LPL are accurate. Well, right now, anyone's legend is 6th, and they're above top esports and Weibo. So basically, if you want to make a public bet, I'll take very favourable odds, because obviously you're taking the favourite here. I'll take odds that those teams, top esports and Weibo, are better than anyone's legend. But you guys must think the standards are legit. So you'll take that action all day long, right? I'm going to extend $10,000 as potential cap for this. So who wants in on my money? Come on in, guys. Come on with the anyone's legend. Because if you don't know, like what he's saying, because you play once each team, the strength of schedule always is what defines the LPL. Like, you don't really know who's good until they're basically like on the last 3 or 4 series. Like until then, there's always a team like the Jokers, even though actually LNG has shit in the bed. Part of their problem, Monty, is they also had an insane schedule. You'll notice they played most of the big names first, so they were always going to look worse anyway.
I mean, they did.
Whereas, like NLP coasted a bit, it's just like that.
I mean, LNG also lost to FBX tonight, and they were on my top 10 too. And they're not the beatings are not going to continue to stop, or the beatings are going to continue, guys. Because
here's another point, Monte. Here's something I'm sick and tired of. It's a fucking power ranking. He is ranking today what their power is. There is zero predictive power in that. He is not saying next week they will be good. So if you say you had that team top 10, but now they lost, yeah, I did that before they lost, dumb fuck. So guess what? When they lose, if you know how power rankings work, that will literally make them go down. Like, it's really not that hard to figure out, is it? And also, the idea on a power ranking, that's even worse, Monte. Hey, I'm doing a power ranking, guys, of this week in League of Legends. First thing I'll be considering is, how did these teams play at Worlds last year? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You're doing it all wrong, guys. Well, it's like also, when we do those betting segments and everyone comes in the comments and they take all the like 3.2 odds underdogs I'm taking and they go, that team's not going to win. It's like, shit. No, you have to consider the favourite. Fucking hell. Holy shit. What are we doing here? What are we doing?
Also, the fact that they see the fans seem to take power rankings as like the ironclad rankings of if we played Worlds, this is how the teams would finish. Where it's like, really, I would say that any team in the top 5 would be considered a Worlds contender at this point in time.
I'll give you an angle, Monte. Here's another thing they don't get about power rankings. It's just about form. So here's the example. Last summer, you actually probably would have had to put BLG over JDG, even though JDG was the best team in the world, because the power ranking was BLG almost never lost, if everyone remembers. So it's also not a ranking of whoever's number 1 would definitely beat number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 100%. Like, that's obviously absurd to think. It's just strength of form, basically.
People literally just get so mad about just being number 2 as opposed to number 1, and not saying like these are the 2 best teams in the world, and probably would be like if I would say BLG is currently number 1, I would say that if T1 and BLG played a best of 5 right now today, maybe BLG would win 52% of the time. That's what that could mean, guys. That's literally what that could mean. Anyway, hilarious.
Here's the problem, though. The reason why T1 fans particularly are the worst for that, Monte, is like I just said, it's always an unfalsifiable position. Whatever happens in reality that they like proves they're right and you're wrong. But then when reality doesn't match up with what they like, reality's wrong. Like, guys, listen. There's one thing I've learned in life. You can't dispute reality. That's the thing that is objectively happening, isn't it? Like, it's the other way around, guys. Your internal subjective madness isn't what actually supersedes the rest of the world. That's actually the opinion of a serial killer, if you don't understand that particular worldview. So I don't care what your fantasy about T1 is. Monty's job is just to tell you how well the teams are playing and who's got the most strength at the moment. You know, let's say it like the title, power ranking. Essentially, what Monty's doing is like fucking Vegeta early on, like, oh, it's power level over 9,000. Like, and you're like, no, he's not even Super Saiyan level 4 yet. Like, give me a break. And also, he would beat Frieza, so he would beat Frieza, would he? It's like, we're not on Frieza yet. We're on fucking season 1. He's the shit. Vegeta.
And also, barring some T1 disaster this coming week, spoiler, BLG is not going to be the top team after losing to IG.
Of course not, yeah. They'll tank him immediately.
Right. LNG's not going to be top 10 anymore. Can tell you guys that 100%.
Please do this for me. Please do this for me. Because there is a world where T1 in the next few weeks might get to be number 1. When they get number 1, all I want is this. Please do either tell me what the comments were or screen, because I guarantee it'll be like that classic one. If you remember back in the day when I would occasionally do historical content, like good content about TSM, like here's what they were good at or when they had a good run. And the joke was people who were TSM fans who used to say I was biased before would go, finally, good journalism. And like, they were so stupid and self-shameless. They would actually say that out loud. Like, finally, you got me. You know, normally I think this guy's full of shit and doesn't know anything about the game, but I guess now he learned his lesson. It's like, no, it just happened to write what you like this time, you dumb fuck. I want to see what they say when T1 becomes the one. They'll be like, finally, Monty came back to the fold. He understands Faker is the true way, the light, and the truth. Like, give me a break. Give me a break, mate. Give me a break.
All right. So with that in mind, we are going to, because we're now talking about games we haven't seen, so let's not do that. Let's talk about games we did see this past week, which were over in the LCK. I fucking hate this KT team, Thorin. I fucking hate them. They are everything.
Essentially, Monty, what they've done is they themselves are the humanoid team of League of Legends. Because you know what I say with humanoid? What I do is this. I'm always out on him, and then the second I'm out, he has one game that's good. And I'm like, hey, maybe he's actually good. And then he just runs it down immediately. Like, that's exactly what this team does. Like, the second you're like, I was almost out, and then they pull me back in. It's like that shit. Like, now you have to give them a flicker of hope. Only a flicker, though. Because I know what you mean. The problem with this team is it just fundamentally doesn't work. But it does still have some good players. So it's just a fucking mess, isn't it? Just a mess.
Yeah. Like, I hate them because, Thorin, why am I cursed with KT? Because for the longest time, you know, KT, my favorite versions of KTB, they just didn't win. What was the first KT team to win? Of course, KT Arrows, which I fucking hated because they were like the worst team to ever win an actual champions tournament. Hachani was a complete fraud. They were beating one of the Samsung teams, which was much more stable. And what do they do? Yep. Of course, can't even make it to Worlds that year because they completely just flop and fall on their faces. Rookie just leaves Korea forever after that. So the best part of that team is just gone.
Think how mad this is, guys. At least at that point, if Monte had pivoted to KT Arrows and they stay there, Monte would have actually been riding the only true rival to Faker on the other team. The joke is, for Monte's team, Faker stays forever in T1. Rookie goes, am I about to become a generational talent? I'll just leave the region and go to China forever.
And then do nothing. He wins one Worlds and is just trapped in garbage teams for the rest of his career.
I love it.
So, I mean, it is torturous. And so then, you know, KT made the super team. Well, I guess they just lose to Rookie in in the year that.
Monty, I actually think logically that should even be connected as a sub-narrative. Technically, Rookie's cursed career is just an inheritor of the KT curse, obviously, because, mate, like you say, even when he won Worlds, the joke is that would have worked. And then right after, they were supposed to win that MSI, they lost to fucking Team Liquid. Like, it's actually true. They are the most. Anyone who touches this org is cursed forever. Like, here's what I would actually like to do. Here's where I am actually evil, T1 fans. You've finally done it. You finally made me. I'm like Frankenstein's monster. I was trying to live with that blind guy and help him, but you fucked with me again, and now I've just had to go fully evil and have one after that. So I'm going to have to go. After this segment, I'll put myself on a fucking ice shard and just drift off on fire, burning, immolating myself in this passionate rant. Because here's what I would say. The only way we could truly know A/B testing if KT is a cursed org is we need to go back in time and we need to convince them to get Faker instead of T1. And I want to see Faker play his whole career in KT Rolster, and I want to see what happens. Can he, like Flash, defy the curse, or will he actually succumb like every other mortal? That's what I want to know.
So maybe this is one of those. Maybe this is one of those things like the Boston Red Sox, where it's like, you know, they had Babe Ruth, but when they didn't have Babe Ruth anymore, like they got cursed. Okay, yes. So maybe they had Flash, and then now that Flash, you know, isn't on KT anymore, so they have maybe the greatest esports player of all time in Flash. Yeah. Like, we could have that debate. He's certainly in the conversation, and then. Now that Flash is no longer playing StarCraft for them, that's where it starts to go downhill.
Well, seems like
can't win after that. But the reason why I hate this team, guys, is because I hate the narrative of like the DRX getting back together, because DRX is like giga fraudulent, right? And you know, Thorin, what I hate most about this is, why couldn't they just actually get DRX to get back together? Why couldn't, if they're going to get DRX together, can we please trade BDD for Zeka? Can we get BDD onto Hanwha Life, for the love of God?
He doesn't want to remake DRX because DRX won Worlds. He wants it as like a prison that they're all consigned to, so they can't like escape and fuck up all the other teams. That's I know.
Dude, they deserve each other. I just want like the Chernobyl reactor.
They can have everyone except Deft. Yeah, exactly. I'm with you.
Chernobyl was a very fine working power plant for a number of years, but once it exploded, you need to actually entomb it in just tons of concrete to keep it there. That's what I need KT or whatever team wants to reunite DRX. That's what I need it to do right now. And the fact that Kingen and Zeka are still out there being terrorists on other teams is just unacceptable. So why can't we get Deft out? Can we get Deft out? And then can we just put all of the rest of them into KT, please? So,
I mean, all I'm going to say is this, Monte. They had 5 players who only a year and a bit ago were the world champions of League of Legends. Spoiler, none of them are in the top 2 teams in the LCK right now. Not a single one of those players who's in one of the top teams. Like, I'm not saying what that might imply, but it does imply something, doesn't it? I'm just saying, you know.
So what people will point out,
the exodus, was it? It was fucking, you know, they didn't really go and win championships.
This team just tilts me so much because honestly, Thorin, the series that they played against Gen G was a fucking terrible series. Those were terrible games by Gen G and by KT. That was some fucking trash ass League of Legends, guys. Like Gen G played appallingly badly. KT played appallingly badly. You'll look at those games and be like, wow, Pyosik had some great games. He did, guys. Pyosik is playing wonderfully right now. That's not why I hate Pyosik. I hate Pyosik because he turns back into a pumpkin every single time. There has not been a time in his career where he hasn't turned back into a pumpkin.
Well, he himself is a razor cake. He's just a jungle razor cake. That's true.
He's like the ultimate
every time
player
you think he's
razor
legit,
cake.
he's going to betray you completely so badly. Yeah, I know.
So you guys are all like, wow, look how good Pyosik is. Here's why you think that. Here are the games that you watched, fans. Here are the games you watched. You watched 2022 Worlds. You watched him play at 2023 Worlds and almost beat T1 with that amazing Lee Sin game. And now you're watching KT pull off these upsets and him being really good. You did not see the years where he was fucking terrible. You didn't watch the season of 2022 where he was garbage for most of the time on DRX. Like, they literally had to sub Juhan
I was going to say that.
They had to sub Juhan in because it was so fucking bad.
There was a title on Reddit that was like, Juhan, World Championship Jungler comments, and all the people were going in the comments like, World Champion. It's like, yeah, you forgot that Pyosik, during his Worlds one, was getting subbed out, guys, for the fucking Juhan guy.
They literally had to sub in Juhan to get to Worlds.
Yes.
Like, you guys didn't watch this
shit.
He
played the professional. Yes, you're right. He was. He was a whole bunch of games. Yes, you're right. When they were beating Live Sandbox. Yeah, true.
You know, it was a team that was not supposed to be at the World Championship. Pyosik was such a dumpster fire that they were subbing him out. Guys, Beryl looks good now, but for every Alistair game against T1 that Beryl actually pops off on, he's had some good games. I do want to give him that. During the Gen G game, he almost just inted game 2 by himself. He magically lived from doing some really dumb overextending on Nautilus in the mid lane. If he dies right there, Gen G maybe gets Baron and then they win the game. Like, instead, KT gets Baron because he walks too far forward and then he manages to dodge a Jarvan ult by using Nautilus Hook, which looked like a fucking giga janky interaction that shouldn't have even happened. So, like, in what universe are we praising this team? They are not even playing very good League of Legends, right? We are going to bet on them versus T1, by the way.
So, yeah, don't worry about that. Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
By the way, just for comedy purposes, I'll very briefly tell people. Obviously, people saw, I think it was the fucking, it was that Nongshim game. You know where he played Rammus for a game, Monte?
Yes. Oh my God.
I don't know if you saw this. The headline on Reddit was fucking amazing because listen to what the headline was.
Okay.
The headline was, Pyosik, this is apparently Deft said this. Pyosik kept appealing during scrims that he learned Rammus while he was in NA and he always wins when he plays it. So we thought we'd play it and we had the chance and today was that day. So like, bro, this guy, he's the only elite Korean who's learning shit from NA and taking it back home. Like, this is so whack.
He's being taught the dark arts, man.
No, I know. What's he doing? Like the joke is, are we going to send Deft over there? And he comes back doing tactical fucking Tristana jumps into the team fights. So what are we doing? Well, in NA, I learned this is the best engage.
And also, like, this was really the first series that we had seen Gen G kind of differentiate from the script that they had been playing for a lot of the season, which is that we typically see Canyon on tanks, on engage tanks, right? And he wasn't playing Rel. He wasn't playing Sejuani. He wasn't playing Maokai in this series. He was playing like skirmishers like Jarvan and Jin Zhao. And like, sure, should Gen G be a good enough team to adapt to this and play around that? Yes, they're all super veteran players. But They didn't play well around that in this series. They played an absolute trash game. And later that week, they came up against Hanwha. They completely dumpstered Hanwha in the 2-0 that they got. And guess what? Kenyon's on Lee Sin, Kenyon's on Rel. These are engaged, like big time engaged champions again. And they cleaned up a lot of their play. Like Keen had a bad day also. Like Keen kind of had a bad day against KT. I'm not sure how prepared they were for KT. But anyway, like, yes, it was a huge upset. Pyosik played super well. Like Pyosik is playing super well right now, but I'm just saying I've seen this before. And so I'm waiting for, I'm just waiting for their performance to drop off, because I just don't think it's sustainable with some of the other teams that they have in the league.
And like you said, if you actually, even though on paper it looks like, oh my God, they beat Gen G, essentially, who are some of us probably, if you're a Korean, the joke is that would be the number one team, not T1, you fucking idiots. But okay, let's put that to one side. You're supposed to get hyped, but as you say, if you watch the match, it just bombs you up for both teams, mate. It's like, fuck, I can't even get hyped off this. So it's fraudulent. It was fraudulent.
It was really a sloppy series. Like, it's not good League of Legends what you're watching in those.
Basically, here's the meme, guys. You know the meme from that Joker movie that everyone loved, where obviously, spoiler, there's that big shocking twist at the end when he goes on that talk show and Robert De Niro is playing like the talk show host, and obviously he like shoots him, right? And if you don't remember that iconic line where he says something like, "You're just gonna do this," or whatever, then that guy, the Joker, says to him, "You get what you fucking deserve." Like, basically, do a meme where Monte is the De Niro character, and so he's like, "So I'm just gonna fucking bet on KT when they've done one good game and they excited me." And that's like, "Yes, you get what you fucking deserve, Monte." That's just Piosik's face, like, "Yeah, you get what you deserve, Monte. You get what you fucking deserve." If you bet, but in this case, to bring it all back, we are indeed going to bet on them. Like, here's the thing, Monty. Those odds alone, I don't care. What I've learned is it's made me like some sort of cold, cynical economist or something. The numbers, Monty, the numbers trump everything. The numbers that high, it must be good. There we go. I find that finally become why I always hate it.
It's worth a flyer. That's the thing. It's like you don't have to like
by
it.
The way, the fact that KT is so trash will make it even more satisfying if we hit the bet. Like, if we actually hit it, it'll be too glorious, won't it? Be too fucking good, mate.
Yeah. But you know, T1 continues to roll. Their early game has been extraordinarily strong. Like, they are such a good team when it comes to snowballing advantages. I think they are the number one team right now. I don't rank, another reason why I put T1 over Gen G is I don't rank week one performances super highly, just because we're coming into, it's like the first games on the new meta in particular, like entirely new map, entirely new itemization, people coming off of breaks, and teams like T1 that played literally to the very end, the bitter end of the World Championship, probably took a longer break off just because they played basically almost every match it was possible to play during the course of the year. And, they're running it back with the same team. So you can be confident they're going to pick it up, and it's a long season. So not too big of a deal for them to win or to lose versus Gen G in the first week of competition. I'd be more concerned about, Hanwha or D+ at this point in time, because they are struggling.
I'm just going to say it now. Before I kept saying as like a general abstract narrative, like, I think it would be cool if Scout went back to Korea. You know what? I've got the solution right now. Listen, get me the fucking right numbers. I'll be the media. I'll make the deal happen. Scout to Hanwha Life. You know what? LNG, you can have Zika. You can have him, mate. You can take him, tell him to pick a Carly, do whatever the fuck you want. Scout, I need to airlift you out, mate. This has gone badly. Tarzan's gone. This ain't working for you. That was the last, that was Civilization. Tarzan, fucking whatever, Lord, whatever he's called. We need to get you back to Civilization now, Scout. Come back to Korea. Come back to Hanwha Life. Hanwha Life will be good with you. You can play the mage that'll make the team work. Let Viper carry you like he did in EDG. To be fair, that World's Viper was a bit crap or whatever.
I'm totally down with the peanut scout jungle mid.
That'll be dope. That'll be awesome. Yeah,
it'd be awesome.
Make it happen. Call me.
Because Hanwha, despite what people say, and yes, guys, they did play game one macro versus Gen G like super badly. They were literally like it was everything that you would not expect from a peanut shot called team, that they were trading down on cross map resources, which is very, very unlike peanut shot calling, where they would overload one side of the map for kills and then lose those like 2 towers on the opposite side of the map. You almost never see that. So people will point at that and say, oh, Hanwha's macro not good. Hanwha's macro has been very good throughout most of the split. That, the Gen G series aside, that hasn't been their problem. Like their mid and late game macro hasn't been the problem. The problem,
if anything,
oftentimes,
this proves what you always said, which was that Peanut was, even though the irony of being called Peanut was the brain of fucking Gen G.
I mean, I know that because I get told by Arnold from Gen G. I literally just ask him questions like, who's shot calling, and he just tells me.
Yes.
And it's not that hard, guys. So I have a pretty good idea of what their internal comms are, and it's not crazy to put that out there because it just helps describe what the team's style is, and they were very successful like that. And I do think that Peanut's shot calling sets a very high floor on any team that he's a part of, because he is so fucking good at it. You could make an argument like, maybe Faker's better than him at this point in time, but Faker also has extremely talented teammates, and Zeus might be the best player in the world right now. That's on an individual level. And he certainly has the best support player in the world in Keria, who can dominate with, he's fucking playing support Ezreal now. You know what I mean?
He's doing it again, guys. I know he's getting the dark tech again.
I don't think support Ezreal is good, but I do think that he can play it, and that's what's that's
by the way
important.
An added unexpected additional value you get out of Harren Carrier is he simultaneously fucks up the enemy's draft by playing shit that doesn't even work, and then some other idiot in another game will fucking try and pick that, so they also fuck up their other draft later on, because they're like, I could be Carrier. It's like, you aren't Carrier, bro, and hey, he barely made this work, so please don't try this, please don't do this pick. Again, as we always say, Monty, sadly, they don't know the Overwatch reference. No, we are not pocketing you. You are not Jordak. If you know the reference from Oversight from back in the day, the one person watching, welcome. That was your reference for you. For the rest of you, don't worry about it. What is a Jordak? Don't worry about it. You don't need to know. No one needs to know anymore.
Sadly, Prophet retired from Overwatch today.
Oh, that's a shame.
And because he's probably the best Overwatch player in the history of the game. So
I would have hoped someone like him would do like Sabiel be or not fucking Sire play. Go to Valorant, mate. You would be sick in Valorant, I'm pretty sure. It'd be amazing.
I mean, maybe he will. But that's just kind of sad news that I thought.
No, by the way, for me, I don't claim to watch the whole history of the game. For me, he was the GOAT. He was the best player I saw in that game. He was mega, wasn't he?
Yep. Hugely talented. Anyway, so Keria, he has, Faker has a lot of tools to work with that are really unique. But Faker's shot calling, obviously among the best in the world. We know that because we saw what happened when he left, which is one of the things that I'm not happy Faker got injured, guys, but I am happy to see what happened when Faker got injured, which is that we realized exactly what Faker was doing in this team, which is 1000% going to help Faker's career narrative in the long run. So never want to see him get injured, but we did learn a lot in that process, particularly about the macro, and just seeing how much that informs our opinions about the excellence of Faker as a leader within that team is great. And Peanut has had wonderful players to work with, and yes, he has choked at international competitions, both individually and in terms of his shot calling. But at least domestically, he's an extremely consistent performer and is undoubtedly one of the most valuable pieces that you could have on an LCK team. So,
also, I would actually speculate that Porby must have done some really fucked up, Adam level shit within T1, because they're so angry with him. They didn't just demote him. They made him play with fucking Reckless. That was like, your punishment must be more severe. It's like, he can't even speak our language. Sheeple! I bet Reckless' first week, he just went, he was like, what does the word sheeple mean? Everyone keeps it. Is it some sort of is it like rotate or something? Like I'm going in? What does sheeple? I get a lot of sheep.
Why does everyone keep calling me Seki?
I know. It's Reki. It's not Seki. I'm Reki. Yeah, you almost got it. Yeah, they've got this cute little nickname. Call me Seki. Yeah, I know. I love it. By the way, spoiler. Notice how everyone told me we're all going to be watching LCK challenges. One, none of you watch it, and two, T1 second from bottom, by the way. So yeah, I like that train, but don't worry, guys. Hey, remember, maybe they'll put Reckless in at Worlds, and then maybe he'll get a World skin, and then maybe after that, Dad'll come home, and then maybe actually I'll pass those grades, and maybe I'll actually get into that program after school that I wanted to be in. That girl will kiss me finally at the disco. Please, can I do it? Can I get it all back, Reckless? Please, just live your lives, guys. He's not playing competitive. He's just in some shitter thing that you don't care about. So just move on. Just find a different player to watch. I did it. In fact, if you know what, I've even done it the right way, Monte. I'll give people a guide as to how you do it. The spoiler is, you know this, Monte. You have to understand esports is the game Crusader Kings. You can't always have the one dope character you like. So what I do, Monte, is I live through their offspring. So are you ready? I'm about to blow people's minds. Notice how, Monte, the players I was obsessed with, think about this, was players like Froggen, God, control mage player, is a little bit more aggressive than people give him credit for, but plays kind of a defensive style. Then I liked a really aggressive AD carry called Forgiven, who just wanted to win constantly, have all the resources loaded into him, and didn't necessarily care what other people thought of it as long as he got the resources. And then I liked this weak side top laner called Soaz, who even though he was weak side, could play the odd carry and was way more valuable than people realised. Nowadays, I'm just a fan of, let's go in order, guys. Larson, Upset, and Odoamne, so no biggie or on that. I'm doing the same fucking thing, you idiots. Your problem is you actually stick with the player from 10 years ago. I've upgraded, and Larson's actually really good. Upset sometimes is good, and Odoamne is good when he's allowed to play on a good team. So there you go. I've sorted that one out for you. I did this pretty quick. It was diminishing returns, but it's all good. You just got to find the next player that's like yours. Essentially, Monte, like Crusader Kings, these are just the children of the lineage of Frog and Soaz and fucking Forgiven. There you go.
My Crusader Kings reference would be that I only like the characters who get really super powerful, and then right at the apex of their powers, they just randomly die of a disease. Like right when you're in that really crucial war, that's like the turning point of your game. That's when your character dies, and just your kingdom either just fractures between a bunch of kids, or just gets handed to your kid with like developmental defects, and then you can't actually do anything at that point in time. Because I like Keen, I like Peanut. These are the guys who are just completely fucking crushing it within LCK. Go to international tournament, immediately suck. Immediately suck.
Shit. Yeah, of course. By the way, what's mad is you've actually lived your real life like Crusader Kings, because what you've done is you've actually crafted your offspring as if you are going to get to become them next. Because what Monte's done is he's managed to have children who are a hybrid between the two regions he's been obsessed with, North America and Korea, and he's had a child where he was more fluent in Korean, so he's just having a kid that can speak Korean from like day one. And then eventually, except the problem here, Monte, is this isn't Crusader Kings. You just time it and go off. Like, you don't actually get to take over their life and pilot them afterwards,
Oh shit! Now you're telling me.
You've even, I'll just say this straight up because I believe it's true. You've even low-key sort of named them what you wish you were named, instead of just like Christopher's a bit plain, You've named them dope names that you wish were your alias, of course. Yeah.
Obviously. I don't think that's a secret. I would freely admit that.
Listen, store this in a time capsule, because if your kids ever grow up and decide, even for fun, to play esports games, please understand this, guys. Right? So I'll give you a random detail. I don't know if you know this, but Rops in Counter-Strike, his actual name is Robin Cool, but then he called himself Rops. It's like, bro, Cool is right there. So if you actually have a sick name, like, spoiler, Orion and Maximus, just call yourself that in the game. It's already a dope alias. Don't pick like fucking Apple or something. Call yourself a Maximus and Orion. That's already a ball of fucking esports name, and it's your real name.
Maximus is literally just Latin for the greatest. How could you go wrong?
There you go. There you go.
How can you go wrong? All right. Other LCK business you want to touch on here? Guangdong, legitimately a good team, I think, besides when they troll with Garen in the top side and do CV Max things.
This actually makes me think, for real, bro, CV Max, I think he only needs like one more good player. He could really do something with this fucking team. Like, if you look at the roster, they're already killing it, like min-maxing. No, but I mean, if they actually want to really challenge and go, like, come third or something, like, it's probably a touch and go if they can even do that now. Like, but what he's done with the roster he's got's incredible. It's actually insane, isn't it?
Look, the roster. So first off, Cuz is like on MVP. He's definitely in the conversation for league MVP.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I brought this up too on the Monte and Wolf show, and we, Wolf and I have an extensive conversation about Kwangdong in general, but I think you'll appreciate this analogy that I made on there, which is that the way that Kwangdong is being run by CV Max is extremely similar to how Peter Dunn ran Evil Geniuses when they started playing Danny. And
I see what you mean already. Yep.
so
It's going to
what
be
I
about
mean,
integrating the newer players, yeah?
so what I mean by that is that in that iteration of EG, the inspired, like, jungle heavy, veteran heavy one. And Peter, by the way, he confirmed this when we talked to him on our shows, which is that they intentionally were like not putting a lot of resources into Danny and like limiting his kind of roles on the team. First off, so that him making mistakes had less of an effect on the game state, but also just because you don't want to put like too much pressure on the new player, which is why, I said a lot of the time, like, his purpose is to play Tristana and like either be a janitor or like split push. And like his job is to auto attack turrets. His job is not to be like an actually good AD carry, he became a much better player over time. But when he started, his role was very limited within the team. And you'll look at Bull and you say, okay, well, Bull has all of these different champions that he's been using. He hasn't been limited in terms of that particular aspect. But what's really important to note about the way that Kwangdong plays is that if you actually look at resource allocation on this team, Bull, because you think of him as an aggressive player, right? And he's actually doing a pretty good job of coming out with favorable lanes. Like, he's kind of middle of the pack, but positive in terms of like gold differential at 10 and XP differential at 10. He's up there in the first blood rankings for AD carries, for first blood participation. But the really key thing here is that he is actually the lowest player in the entire league when it comes to CS taken after 15 minutes. So as a percentage, so obviously unusual for AD carries, to have a low CS taken. So the top player in the league, by the way, for AD carry is aiming. He takes 31.3% of his team's CS after 15 minutes. Bull takes 21.5%. He takes 10% of the total team CS less than aiming. That is a titanic difference. Even Deft, who takes the second lowest, is still almost 4% higher than Bull. So the gulf between Deft and Bull is almost the same, or is between Deft and aiming, who's at the very top. So think about that, guys. He takes almost no CS after 15 minutes. He also does the lowest percentage of damage after 15 minutes. So Teddy is the top with his team. Not always a good sign in that case. Like in Teddy's case, it's because he's the only player on his team who's good, right? Pays, however, is second on that list. Aiming is fourth. So Bull is both low damage overall and very low economy, which obviously you have to ask the question, who is getting the money on this team and who is doing the damage? Part of this is Dudu and Cuz are getting a lot more money than most top laners and junglers are, but also because of the champions that Bulldog plays in the mid lane, he is doing a crazy amount of the team's damage. Bulldog is actually third, or he's second in the league in terms of damage percentage after 15 minutes, and the only person ahead of him is Fiesta, who played one game. So the only player, every other player who's played, 18 games or so, 17 games, Bulldog is top. So he's actually, as far as mid laners go, doing the highest percentage of damage on his team. And he's actually been very efficient because he's the fourth lowest in terms of resources taken after 15 minutes. Faker obviously is number one. Faker's famously in the last few years been very low economy. But it also, you have to look at the champions they play. Well, Bulldog's been playing Hui, Corki, Azir, so very high damage late game poke champions for the most part. But Africa have done an excellent job of kind of empowering Bulldog. Now, Bulldog looks dumb sometimes because he overextends and dies, but really he's been a very efficient mid laner, and they found a strategy that works for them without putting a lot of carry potential onto Bull. It's been on Bulldog playing poke, but mostly, guys, it's been on Dudu and it's been on Cuz. And Dudu was always a good top laner. We talked about this last year. Dudu super underrated. Super underrated. He is now taking the most resources of any top laner after 15, and he's doing the third most damage behind Doran and Zeus, right? So he's been really good, and so has Cuz. And this is where this team's damage is actually coming from. So the point is that Bull is a rookie. It doesn't matter so much if he dies because he's not taking a bunch of the gold and potential damage with him. So the expectations could be kind of set around that. Has Bull been amazing? No, but he's like winning his lanes for the most part. And then he doesn't get any resources. So the people who are carrying this team are the ones where the resources are being put into. And for the most part, they are either playing poke champions from the back line in Bulldog's case, even though it's only his second year, or it's the veterans of Cuz and Dudu that are doing great. And Bull honestly looks very good when you actually look at his play. The team itself is not putting those resources in yet, which is why I say they're a lot like EG.
Here's the thing, Monte. I will follow up your very shrewd and well-balanced and articulated, eloquent description of how they play and resources with a completely nonsense metaphorical thing, which isn't at all serious. And I'll just prep people now because take it too seriously. So basically, here's how you know that CV Max is a fucking gangster. Because his team is so fucking hood down to the aesthetic. So think about this, guys. First of all, you've got Dudu in the top lane, or Durag, as I call him. Then you've got Cos, one up Cos. They've got Cos there. Young Jay, that even sounds like someone who has a mixtape. What's going to be around in the hood? A load of fucking bulldogs. I'll tell you that right now. And I'll tell you what, they're going to have them on a leash if they know what's good for them. And then you're going to think, what can I possibly do with Andil? Because I'll pay you on the 1st and 15th. And then finally, what's the name of the team? Freaks. So, of course, they're kind of a bit wacky and they're fucking with everyone.
Very nice.
Not bad. Like I said, there was no actual analysis in there. It was just a bunch of garbage about being ordered. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, the one factor of this team is like Quantum.
CV Max's Nipsey Hussle.
There you go. Quantum like came in because I guess Andil had some problems where he couldn't play. Quantum was fine. Andil has been playing super well. I hope he comes back soon. But Quantum was good. And like, I really like where Kwangdong is going. Lots of questions like, is this team going to do well when Bulldog has to play different kinds of champions where he can't just sit in the back line and do a gazillion damage from a screen away? Like, I don't know. Is this team going to be good when they don't get a bunch of super powerful picks that are frequently banned away from other teams? Like, why are they getting Corki so much? Why are they getting Cassante so much? I have questions. Because KT, for example, thought that they could just like drop 8 bans on 80 carries and kill Bull in his first match, and that didn't fucking work. So basically what happened is the rest of this team got crazy good picks. So I think maybe there is a kind of ceiling for this team as long as they don't have a super powerful mid laner, but maybe Bulldog becomes that guy. He's certainly a lot better than he was last year. He's evolving, and they certainly have very good mid or top lane and jungle right now, and the rookie bot lane's looking promising. So you have to think that maybe this team is by next year possibly highly competitive with the players that they have. With enough development. You also
see why that story makes sense of them like Scrim and T1. Like there's a logic to like why was some value there. There was some more than we saw in the players. Like they weren't the team we thought they were. Yeah. Especially with the addition of Cuz. It's a game changer, right?
And we didn't expect Cuz to continue to be this good. Like it was surprising he was good for as long as he was on KT last year. And he, in my mind, is definitely in the MVP conversation this year for how hard he is carrying this team. So I think they're great. I really like this team. I like the dynamic. It seems like they're easing Bull into it, and I'll be interested to see how they perform in future metas where they may be more reliant on Bulldog playing more difficult to execute champions in the mid and late game. But they have been like surprisingly good in terms of mid and late game play. Bulldog's laning is garbage though. That's the downside.
That's why I actually like that analogy about Danny, because that's the point. What people never understood. It's actually why it's a shame Danny couldn't continue. He was one of the weirdest, most idiosyncratic bot laners I've ever seen. Because famously, the thing was he was a bit weird in lane, but if you got him to a team fight, he was like insanely good. So that as a result, Peter Dunn's smart enough to know. Then let's just basically like fucking sort of have a protection for this motherfucker through the laning phase. Don't put any pressure on him, but then let him carry in the team fight with his team fight champion. Yeah, it was dope. So I know what you mean. This actually shows the coaching staff's doing it, not just the player himself.
Yeah, So
Because actually, like you're saying, I hope people get the implication. If you were doing as well as this guy is, you just demand all the farm in the late game, but he's not. They're clearly not doing that as the resource approach. Yeah,
it's like it has to be super deliberate in the way they're assigning lanes and assigning CS in the mid and late game, Thorin, because this guy is he's so low economy. Like it's actually crazy how few resources he is taking relative to other players. And a lot of that is instead going to Cuz, who's like the highest economy jungler in the entire fucking league. You know, it's him and Pioshik who are right at the top, and then Owner, and then Willer. I mean, none of these are surprises as to why they would be that far up. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Now, part of this too would be dependent on which teams are playing fasting Senna, clearly, because then the support player gets kind of a much larger share of resources. So that's something to consider when you look at these stats as well. But the thing about Bull is he's played 3 games of Senna, but you know he's played a bunch of other champions too, so that affects it for sure. The fasting Senna thing affects it.
Can you believe we live in a world where D+ is 3 and 5? Why? It's just suffering. It's just suffering, mate. Why? When does it end? When does the suffering end? Ever? I mean, does it end ever?
No.
It's not looking good, is it? I know.
Look, this team is really scuffed, Thorin. They're just never going to have shot calling with this roster. They didn't bring in a shot caller. Like, it'll take time for Lucid to be able to do that if he ever does it. Lucid looks really good for a rookie, but Showmaker's had some good games. However, like Aiming and Kellen are they're just terrible.
The problem is, I get the sense Aiming is one of those players where, like, look, I know this is something people put on ADCs a lot, but ADCs can be a bit brainless. He needs someone also to hold his hand and set the team up around him, mate. Like, on his own, he's going to make some weird decisions at times, you know.
I mean, even on KT, the thing about Aiming is that he is super high resource. That's who he is as a player.
Of course.
He's
a massive gamble. Yeah, of course.
I mean, always when we saw this guy on KT, he was always like the most CS is given to him.
Yes.
And he still demands that, but he hasn't been carrying the game to that degree that he used to be able to do on champions like Zeri, right? I mean, we see him picking Zeri now. That's where we're at with this guy. I mean, he's picking Kog'Maw and then inting away a game. But it's also like, dude, the Pyke pick was just so fucking terrible. Like, you're going to play Pyke into double Hail of Blades AD carry against the best double Hail of Blades AD carry team in the world. Like, I understand what you think you're going to do in theory, but you're never going to do that thing. You are never. And also, by the way, Thorin, this was Kellen's 3rd professional game on Pyke ever. He's not even a Pyke player, so it makes even less sense. And then he just wanders around the map, never hitting level 6.
As someone who not only loves that champion, but I also love it when it's used effectively in pro play. There are, like, dude, that should only ever at any time be a conditional pick, as you're saying. It's never something that you can just force someone on. And especially if you have a look, you better be one of the absolute best Pyke players in the world if you pick that in competitive. Because this is the problem, Monty. Everyone just sees in their mind a bunch of images flash when they think of Pyke, of him like jumping around, killing everyone. You don't get to, as Monty's saying, in these lanes, you're never going to get to that point. That part of the game will never be unlocked for you. You will always just be a shitty lane spot who can't do anything. You can just get tanking aggro all lane long. It's going to be shit for you. It's going to be an absolute nightmare, seriously.
Well, especially when you can't even be in lane, so you're wandering around never hitting 6, Thorin. Like, you can't actually chain ult if you never get ult, which he basically didn't get in that game, because he was just they were getting their shit pushed in bot lane 24/7. It's just the audacity to, like, first off, the audacity to give T1 Ashe, like, never. That's never allowed. That is never fucking allowed. Like, Keria is not allowed to play Ashe. That is how the game of League of Legends works. This is why everybody bans Ashe. This is why, you just can't do it. You can't fucking do it.
The obvious joke, we fucked it up. The obvious joke is, I guess D+ is also their grade as well as their team name.
Yes,
because I would give this lineup a D+.
It
almost passes, but not quite. Almost. What they needed to be was C-, then they'd have passed. But
exactly.
So
exactly. I mean, why they named themselves this is also
perfect. It's actually perfect, isn't it? I know.
So fucking.
By the way, am I the only one who's missing this? The original name was dope. Damn One is a pretty cool name.
Yeah,
then when it's like DWG Kia, D+, like fucking hell, please, what are you doing? What are we doing right now? Damn One is an awesome name, by the way. That's a fucking sick name.
I don't know why we changed it. Their new logo also sucks.
Yeah, but luckily they're in a league with Fear X, where it just looks like some sort of like. First of all, the Fear X one reminds me of the old Mouse Sport CS logo, if you remember, with the mouse with the ear at the back. And then also, it just looks like that stupid fucking Pokemon, where it's like a fucking fox or whatever it is, like Eevee. Is it actually Eevee? I'm thinking of whatever. It just looks like a shitty Pokemon, doesn't it? And then for some reason, Ryu's just the one coaching that team. Like, oh, he's back, he's alive. Ryu's here. Well, speaking of curses, he now. Oh, here's the thing, Monty. Oh, what's Faker doing like 10 plus years after the ZV1v1? Oh yeah, he's just winning worlds still. Still plays for T1. How's Ryu doing? He coaches Fear X. Please. Like, no, what a cursed career. What a cursed career, bro. Cursed. What an evil career that guy had.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that wraps up most of the compelling LCK discussion of this last week.
The last thing I'll say, the one last joke I have for you is this, which is on Fear X. I do though. You know, I love when they have weird names as their aliases. What I actually fucking love is the name of the other coach on Fear X. Because go to Gamepedia now and look up the name of the assistant coach. It's literally Arnold Schwarzenegger saying the word duty. You got to do your duty. Duty. You got to do your duty. That is the name of their fucking. What name is that? It's so fucking good. I love it. I actually fucking love it.
I have no idea actually who this guy is.
Who knows who he is? Just some bloke, and
I haven't seen him.
Does he have any history doing anything?
I guess he was on Live Sandbox's secondary team up until this year. So he's in the Live Sandbox like challengers and youth. And he was in academy, and yeah, he's just been on Sandbox since 2019 in their amateur program. Looks like interesting.
Okay.
So now, I mean, I hated the name Live Sandbox, but somehow Fear X is even worse. I know, it's amazing, isn't it? I love it. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll hit you with some viewer questions. See you in a couple.
Right, we're back for the viewer questions segment. Obviously, we do not literally source these from people watching after the show or live on Twitch or YouTube. By the way, if you don't know, you can also watch this live on YouTube each week. It's streamed there as well. So if you're a YouTube fan, go there. Obviously, I mean, to be fair, I would say the rewind feature, but technically you can also go on the YouTube, the Twitch VOD and just watch it now if you want to catch 20 minutes ago also. Basically, we actually take these from people who support us directly financially. So the way you do that is you pay for a Discord subscription. It's actually one of the ones that gives the highest revenue cut to the creators. So that's why we're using this one particularly to get the questions. And so, yeah, this is how we're going to source them all from our Discord server. Subscribe there if you want to ask a question.
Yep. Okay. With that in mind, let's go. Our architect of Korean esports based Joe Marsh, you're back. In your opinion, what is the biggest flaw in the philosophy of Marx?
Well, here's the thing I would say right at the outset. I don't know about you, Monty, but one of the biggest problems with every discussion that involves Karl Marx is, I'll just say it right now, I've barely read any of Karl Marx's books. Notice no one else says that at the outset, Monty. Everyone acts like he wrote like a fucking one paragraph pamphlet and we've all read it. Like the real joke is this, guys. If you don't know, like the Communist Manifesto, for the people I know who are knowledgeable, they say it's not even one of his best works. They say it's like one of his, it's a very simple, flimsy thing. Whereas the joke is it's things like Das Kapital that people are really into, and his actual and his thoughts about actual economics, etc. So I don't know anything about any of that. So all I would say is this: I can only, as a result, talk to things like real world applications of ideas like communism and socialism. And I would essentially say the main flaw is just this, which is what I think is the physical manifestation of this philosophy, which is it can sound like a brilliant utopian fantasy that we should essentially share with each person and give them what they need and help everyone and help the bottom of society. The problem I would say is this: I think the way it tends to be actually manifested is either you get the nightmare like you have in America, where it's like you do socialism, but it's the other way around. It's for the rich people, and then the poor people get the pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but the rich guy in the bank, he gets to get bailed out over and over over and over again and never is allowed to fail. Or you do the whole communist system, which tends to just be, let's use the resentment of the lowest class to kill everyone we don't like. And then I'm just a king, but I'm called like the fucking, leader of the party or the secretary. The real problem, as far as I can tell, is the real world manifestations have almost nothing to do with the philosophy. And it's one of those areas where an idea isn't necessarily the same as a tangible physical thing to me. So I will just say, I know fuck all about Marx. I don't know, except a little bit about his biography. That's about it.
I've read the Communist Manifesto and I've read sections of Das Kapital, but I'm not going to pretend to be a Marx expert who's read everything. So to Thorin's point about actual practical application, the problem is that when you just take elites and then you replace them with a different set of elites that just espouse a different philosophy, but in actuality, you're not getting rid of elites and you're not getting rid of centralized power. And in fact, you're creating very insidious systems of authoritarianism that then require you to, and communism is very explicit about being atheistic. And so you replace religion with communism as the religion, and then just like in highly dogmatic religion, anybody going against the orthodoxy or the groupthink is then put into a fucking gulag or killed. So the practical applications of it, I do think that communism can work in like a Star Trek sense, in like a post-need society, when you live in a society where everybody has the ability to kind of actualize as a person because they're not worried about food or shelter or their basic needs being met, then I think you can actually start to manifest some of those ideals. They have replicators in Star Trek, so it's super cool. And I think that Star Trek, the Federation as a society, is highly aspirational for this reason. But I think it's difficult to legitimately implement that until you have solved kind of the fundamental issues of basic needs.
You just saying there, Monte. You're saying it totally works as long as you have machines that have produced
that make food out of
supply.
nothing. Yeah, exactly.
Infinite from literally nothing. Yeah,
exactly.
So essentially, he's not saying it doesn't work. But okay, I would also say this. I once heard someone describe it like this. I thought it was a very shrewd way to say it. They said, in the same way as the reason why most of the political divide in Western countries doesn't make sense because it depends what the issue is. Like, for example, maybe there's a person, Monte, in America who on a personal level wants to own a gun. So they have the right-wing gun ownership angle, but then maybe they want social programs for the poor or something. That's a left-wing topic, right? The point there is it doesn't make sense to be one or the other for that person. He wants a nuanced, like, combined position. So I once heard someone say it like this, Monte. Socialism makes sense within your family because you would want to share with your family and make sure the worst person take care of. But once it's your family going out into the world, which is what you represent as the breadwinner, you have to compete with people to some degree. So maybe then you wouldn't want to share everything in the same way. So I would say it's another one of those things where you can't, there's not one size fits philosophy that fits every aspect and situation. That's actually one of the biggest nightmares of the world is single factor analysis to me.
I think it also just runs into the issue of globalization and massive political nation states, which are not things that human beings evolved to comprehend. And so
they're by definition artifice, of course. Yeah.
Right. And I think that what happens with the practical application of communism is that it sounds good from an intellectual perspective, but on the microcosm of people living their daily lives and the way we evolved to react to our environment and the way we evolved to compete for resources makes it so that it can't actually function in our current kind of evolutionary state. That's why I said it needs to be a post-resource needs society, because it just doesn't work, I don't think, any other way, because people are programmed to hoard resources for survival.
I'll give you another reason why, in my opinion, it just doesn't fundamentally work in reality. And it goes like this. The problem you will get is basically, where was I going with that one? Let me think what the angle was. Wait there a second. Oh, that's it. Because if you notice, haven't you noticed, Monte, it's not presented in the modern day as an economic course or a political theory. It's presented as a moral theory, Monte. So what people will always tell you who are communist / socialist / left wing is the reason we must do this is because just be a fucking good human TM and that we have to take care of everyone in society. So the premise they're setting up is the notion that, like, You know, all these terms they use, they're so fucking Orwellian, this language, like harm reduction. Like, what we need to do is make a better society for everyone. Spoiler, they even say themselves the line, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. By the way, that already, if you don't know the euphemism, means kill people if you have to for the many. I know you don't get that, guys. No, it just means the needs. Yeah, the question is, what do you need? So the problem you always end up with is this. If someone does it specifically from a utopian bent, where what they're telling you is, if I can implement this system, it will be better, net positive for our country and humanity, that literally, that philosophically justifies any amount of murder. Because what you're saying, Monte, is this, right? Yeah, it sounds terrible. I have to kill 1 million people, but in exchange, I will give you an infinite society that has infinite well-being, infinite harm reduction, and everyone is taken care of. Well, the point is, if you're weighing it up in some fucked up economic way like that, like where you only care about like the values of people, not specific people you know, that will say, well, it doesn't have to if you have to kill 100,000 enemies of the state, they're the ones stopping you implementing the system. And unfortunately, that way of thinking is why I think all the murder happens, unfortunately. Because what they're thinking is, it's essentially, if I just kill this last person, then we implement the system. Oh shit, there's 10 more people. Well, it won't matter though, because we're going to help millions. And if you keep doing that thinking, that's why I think so many of those regimes have had such horrific genocidal records, unfortunately. Go on then. Next one.
Next question. How would you say Fallen compares to Messi as the most overrated player in the world after the latter has won the AFCON Player of the Tournament? What's AFCON?
It's weird now. That's like, I assume
the Americas one?
Must be like America's Federation.
Yeah.
Con whatever it's called, something. It's basically like their version of the Euros, I'm guessing. It's like it's South America all plays each other, right?
It's the Africa Cup of Nations, I guess.
Well, then what the fuck's he talking about? Because Messi doesn't play in the Africa Cup of Nations.
I don't know.
So
I don't think
has he mixed up Salah and Messi there or something? I don't know what's going on there.
I think he meant
he meant the Concaccio Cup or whatever the fuck they call it. I think he means.
Yeah, I think. I don't know. I don't know anything about Messi, so this is confusing for me.
Yeah, I think he means the Copa America.
Okay,
I think he means that, but I don't know if that just happened now. Did that? I don't fucking know. Fuck this question. I don't have to answer hypotheticals. Basically, what he's done is he's tried to tee it up for me to say Fallen's really overrated. So, no, I don't think the comparison is a very good one, because here's the problem. I still think Messi is not only a contender for the best player ever, as in he could be the best player ever, but if you don't think he is, he's still like one of the like 3 or 4 best people ever to play football. The problem is Fallen isn't even close to that category. Like the joke is, I don't even think as an IGL Fallen would probably be top 4. So the idea that, like, that's exactly why I made that tweet. What enrages me about the response to that tweet, Monte, is nobody ever in good faith fucking read it and looked at the argument. They just heard me say Fallen is overrated and went, that means he is bad. So you're saying he was always bad every second and he's never ever been good. It's like, Jesus Christ, that's not what I said ever in any the same person. If you're an NBA fan, if you're not a LeBron fan, you think he's overrated, don't you? Well, how could he be? He's good, isn't he? Didn't he score those points? Didn't he win those shots? So anyway, the point is, I even in my comment, if you remember, said, I put the context. Dude, people go out their way not to understand me, Monte. The tweet wasn't Fallen's the most overrated player. In the next sentence, it said he was never the best player on any team he played on. Pretty key context if you want to be an all-time great player. And then I added, and people act like he was Zidane. If people don't know, I think Zidane was the best player in the world in like 1998 or whatever. He was like the most graceful player who was not only your best player, he would control the whole game and he was peerless. Nobody could fuck with him. Fallen wasn't that guy. What happens is in 2016 and 2017, he was a good player, like top 10 in the world, but he had the best player in the world, Coldzera, and sometimes a Coldzera and Fur. He had like the 2 of the top 5 players in the world for me. So I always thought he was mega overrated. So I don't think Messi is that overrated. My biggest problem, by the way, is Messi. This is why I keep making this analogy to Ziwu. Messi and Ziwu have done nothing wrong. They are fucking sick at the game. But the reason why I am so critical is because their fans can't shut the fuck up making dog shit arguments. So what I'm responding to is their fans. I am not responding to... I've never had any negative will towards Ziwu. I have no ill will towards Messi. He is actually probably the best dribbler to ever play football. He's mega entertaining to watch. But if a dickhead Messi fan goes, Messi is not just the best, but Ronaldo is trash, and not, then that's what annoys me. That's what I think makes him overrated. The fan there overrates him, not me. I don't overrate Messi. I think he's fucking baller.
There we go.
Fallen was just a very good in-game leader who had a couple of years he was good with the AWP, and then he fell off literally about 8 years ago. And last year was signed for $700,000 reportedly. By the way, that's more than Monte cost. So you'd think that would make people go, you know what? Maybe Thorin was right. Maybe this cunt's overrated. And are you ready for the joke of all jokes, Monte? When he went and joined the best Brazilian team with the best Brazilian player, they are fucking terrible. They come like last place in tournaments, bro. It's insane. They didn't even get into Katowice. They lost to like, I think fucking the Mongolian team or whatever. But guess what? Genghis Khan wasn't walking through that door. It was just Mongolian CS players, guys. They weren't even riding slanted on the horses. The original gangster with the sideways, whatever, the Glock or whatever. I don't know why. I had a connection going on there. It's all good. Don't worry. No, don't worry about it. It's all good. They were slanted, weren't they, when they were going, you know.
You have the power to add ranged auto attacks to an existing melee champion of LoL in order to make it as toxic and obnoxious as possible. What champion do you choose?
We're adding what to a ranged champion?
We're adding ranged auto attacks to a melee champion in League of Legends to make it horrible. I mean, I think the obvious answer is Gangplank. Like, Gangplank would be fucking horrible. Because look at his trial by fire passive and the ability to auto attack while like putting fucking barrels down would be horrible, guys.
I've got a good one for
horrific. Or Master Yi. Oh my god.
Being as this champion is currently played, I'm just going to say it. Udyr. Imagine trying to kite that funny. If he could do ranged attacks on you. That would be pure cancer, wouldn't it? That would be actually insane.
That's a good one.
That would be so OP. He'd be broken as fuck.
Master Yi would be fucking terrifying.
That would be pretty bad
as well.
You know, one thing I can't lie. I've always held it against the LCK. That all those years ago, I'm going to say it was in like 2017 or something, when there was that one fucking week where supposedly Faker played Master Yi on solo queue and he was godlike, but then all the LCK teams just banned him out in LCK. Bro, I wanted to see what the Faker, like prime Faker Master Yi would have done to you. That would have been so fucking good. That would have been so dope. But as usual, this is actually a famous thing in Korea. People see when Faker was playing something, they used to just ban the shit out immediately, of course. Of course. That would have been toxic as fuck, mate.
Okay, next. Since Doublelift's departure from TL in 2020, CoreJJ has had Tactical, Han-Sama Doppelganger, and Yun as his bot lane partners. Looking back now, realistically, which ADC do either of you think would have been A, the best option for CoreJJ, and or B, the right option? Well, CoreJJ's kind of washed, guys. Like, he individually, like, yes, his ADCs have sucked, but he has kind of also sucked.
He's fallen off.
So...
If people don't know, that guy, especially behind the scenes, you'll know this, had the most insane rep I've ever heard of a player that went to LCS. Like, literally, I think they even have like a nickname. I think the players had a nickname, like they call him Picasso or something insane because of how like genius he is in the game. That's from years ago now, mate. That's like, we're almost talking about like when Alfari was there, when that was still a thing now. Like, the problem in these latter years is they seem to still build around him and give him all this power, but he's not the same dope-ass player. Like, now he's just like a good player. But so eventually they got to him. LCS got to him eventually. The skill vampires were just delayed. They just took a few years detour, I guess.
But who do you think we should have played with him?
With who?
With CoreJJ. Like, what is the best option? What would have been the best option in the post Doublelift era?
So it has to be someone who can play in NA. I mean, the obvious one to me would be, because, mate, we've seen him back in the LPL. Why didn't you put this guy with Prince?
Yep.
Mate, the Prince guy now back in the LPL, popping again. He's good. That would be interesting, right?
I mean, Prince has been on the struggle bus in the LPL a bit.
Listen, he had talent.
But he does have.
Maybe
he does have
be the player who'd guide him. You know.
He does. He did have the talent coming in, and I would have liked to have seen that when Prince came in for sure. Yeah. I don't know. I think like even with some of the other rookies that might have looked better, like you could make an argument that Masu right now looks pretty good. Maybe that would be a better option for him at the present time. But it has been weird. He hasn't had very good AD carries, and we still don't know why Han-Sama was so bad when he was in the NA. Next question. Roland Barthes argued that a critic becomes an artist when they are able to articulate an insightful opinion on a piece of art. Bart was infamous for demythologizing cultural phenomena. Bart eventually came to the conclusion that while certain groups interpret art similarly, it is impossible to imbue a set meaning into art. Rather, it is simply masks all the way down. Bart took this as a positive, as it allows every individual to enjoy art from their own perspective and believes in artists through critique. Bart believed the critic is not bound by nature, but rather bound by what they constantly engage in. Thoughts on Bart? Yes, and have you read him before? Yes, I have read Bart when I was in college. It has, however, been a very long time since I've read Bart. I think the arguments are interesting. It's a very like postmodern way to look at art, and also he was into semiotics, so he definitely like, believed in kind of like the sign and the signifier, right? And so that's the interpretation, because he's looking at it, I think, very much from like a linguistics perspective. Like it's like literary theory through linguistics and semiotics. So it makes sense that he would say that the art itself is in the mind, like is in the way that you interact with the art, in the way that you interact with language as a signifier of meaning. I would like to believe that there is inherent truth or inherent power in certain forms of art, and that it isn't all on the interpretation of the critic. But I do think that the idea of the critic becoming an artist themselves by interpreting the art is valid. Like, I do think that the ability to express your own reaction to that beauty and articulate it in a beautiful way is in fact a form of art itself. And I think that's why we have great critics, for example. That's why I disagree in general with the principle that the artist or the athlete or the person who is doing the thing is the only valid purpose. And this is, by the way, just taken to the maximum, where it's the quote from Roosevelt about the man in the arena, right? Where it completely devalues the critic. There is an artistry to criticism, and there is an artistry in interpretation of art or of action as well. Because throughout most,
it's almost a type of meta art, right? You're working with a narrative too,
right? And especially when it comes to athletics, for the vast majority of human history, the only thing we have is the critic reception of it, right? All we would have is written sources of the feats that were done, because those were not able to be captured in film or another medium in which they could be viewed by us today. So, in fact, the critic has been enormously important throughout human history to catalog the wars, the feats of heroism that have been done, because it was the only way to do so, right? Have you ever read any Bart?
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
Except for when he was said, like, whatever he wrote on that blackboard at the beginning of the episode every week. So that's the only thing I know about that. No, what I would say is, like, basically I did a video on my side channel quite similar to this, which is about how I think that you meet all art halfway, and what you bring to the table is massively influential over what you not only can take in terms of what the author might have intended. Like, if you can't connect to what they were trying to say, you won't get anything out of it. But also, I actually think that is what makes this type of content so vibrant, is the idea that somehow it connects to something in you or your life experience or what you're thinking. So all I would say on this particular topic is, to me, like, the best example this is why, in a way, Monte, here's the thing. I do agree that, like, the concept that, like, for example, I don't think beauty is subjective. I do think it's actually an objective thing. It's about how you perceive certain, like, things. And if you were to, like, essentially aggregate among all humankind, the civilizations, etc., you would get certain things. Now, look, they'd also be tailored to those civilizations, but you'd get certain patterns would emerge in the same way as if we did a search on Tinder. The actual patterns that would emerge that people are white swiping would probably be the most beautiful people,
It's why we have so many parallels in mythology, right? Like, these are independent cultures coming up with independent stories that have resonated throughout thousands of years, and they emerge organically in many different societies, right?
But this is why, though,
for psychological reasons, we have to.
This is why it doesn't surprise me. Someone in the field of semiotics would say, though, that they don't think you can actually have a message that gets to everyone.
Right.
The best example would be the last week on the internet, on Twitter, there was this massive discourse about the film Starship Troopers. And what happened was there was two groups of people. There's the people who are incredibly left-wing, terminally online people, and their take is, what the hell? They were evil to the bogs, and those bogs might not even even have been guilty and maybe they were the good guys. And the joke there is like, that's how you know there's nothing in the message. Because wait a minute, the message, even if you don't like the actual like fucking novel, is a critique of fascism. It's not that the bugs that were the hive mind were the good guys. Like what you've done there, guys, is show that what you have as your hierarchy of values of what is beautiful, what is good, what is innocence, what is pure. You've actually got such a perverted hierarchy of values. You chose that by definition, the side that has nothing going for them. Essentially, you've almost implied, because this is where their position politically is, you just hate current humans, which they do philosophically in the modern day. Meanwhile, terminally online right-wing people just went like, it was all good, all the stuff they did in their society. That is actually a perfect society. And even though you're not realizing yourself, but we aren't facing a hive mind bug threat, we're facing other humans. So what they did wouldn't always be justified. So it's another example of where you could have had either a brilliant post-modern discussion nobody had, or you could all, like they're doing, interpret it literally along your own simple understanding, in which case you can take two completely 180 polar counter takes on the same original piece of art, which I would say has none of that. It's just I think they all brought their own shit to the table and went away with their own shit. That's my analogy.
I mean, if you actually watch the movie, I mean, what's fun about discussing that movie and what I really like that Verhoeven did with it is that the bugs might be malicious. We actually don't know that because the asteroid the asteroid hits Earth, and you don't know whether it was totally accidental. You don't know. So what's interesting about that film is that the fascist human society's response is to launch an attack on the bugs' homeworld, which is like completely out of proportion, without even knowing what the intent behind the bugs' asteroid hitting Argentina or whatever it was.
Never happened though, Monte. Luckily, no one would ever do something like invade Iraq because of a terrorist action that was unrelated. That would never happen. So that's like part really for me because I wasn't a precedent for it in history, technically this movie did come out in 1997, to be fair. So
it was just prescient in some way. It was just prescient in some way.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily because of a rogue subgroup, right, that could have caused some kind of attack or a complete accident.
Yes.
A complete accident. You don't know what the bugs are doing.
Classic one. You could do it yourself to justify doing the war. Yeah, of course.
And so, what I love about that film is like the fascist society that the humans are in is obviously like ridiculous, and the kind of like absurd kind of blind retaliation they do is an indictment against the militarization and the fascism, and the violence present within humanity. But also, like, are the bugs to be sympathized with? Like, they could have done this as a preemptive first strike. This could have been their Pearl Harbor or whatever, and like the retaliation could have been justified. We don't fucking know at the end of the day.
So, bro, the only time you see the bugs, they are killing people, and then the other bugs suck people's brains out. Like, again, bro, I'm not saying you have to love the side of the militaristic humans, but if you watch that movie, and on the one hand you go, wow, the humans are disgusting, then you see the bugs and go, it's me, for real. Like, what the fuck self-report is that? Bruh, what self-report is that? Like, that's what you identify. Wait a minute. So a modern day literal tanky communist identifies with a barely human fucking hive mind creature that would just kill all humans if it could. Bro, it's too on the nose. You're telling on yourself at this point in time, I love it. I fucking love it. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good metaphor for what we were talking about, though, if you know what I mean.
I like how we got to the Starship Troopers internet argument from the Roland Bart question. All right. Our favorite fan, Butt Pounder 420, asks, I have no idea what this means. This is probably a dangerous question.
Come on.
What if JFK's head just did that? What the fuck does that
funny.
mean?
No, what he means is like his joke is what if he wasn't even like assassinated and shot? What if his head just exploded? It's almost like a Rick and Morty question, isn't it? Like, look, I will say that would be a hilarious but incredibly incendiary episode for sort of like a Twilight Zone episode or something, and that would actually be straight fire, I know.
Okay, that's what I thought it meant, but I didn't know if it was like related to some sort of conspiracy. But it is a funny question.
Here's what pisses me off, Monty. Here's what really pisses me off. One thing I hate in life, if you notice, one thing I would say I'm very good at, actually, Monty, if you see on these shows, is I don't have to agree with you, but I know in order to know what you're talking about, to see your perspective, I have to let you make your point. So I'll let someone do their premise. I'll accept the premise temporarily. I'll ask questions. I'll round out the worldview. And then once I've seen their worldview, then I can sort of take their point on board. You can't just take the point without knowing where they're coming from, what they believe in, and what they think of other things, right? So what I would say is this. people never do actually think through things like, what if these things are conspiracies? Because here's why they don't. They don't think how many cool or weird or hilarious alternate realities that would spawn. So I'll give you an example. Has no one ever thought of this reality? That if Oswald, I'm now theoretically speculating, if he wasn't the one who killed him, imagine being Oswald. You go up to that thing, you've got this whole mission, you've got this whole thing, maybe you're controlled by the Soviet Union, maybe the CIA, maybe the fucking Cuban. You go there, Monte, you set up your rifle, you got it trained in, you're about to fire, and the guy's head just explodes. Mate, what the fuck would the next 5 seconds be like for you? Because on the one hand, you're like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't even do it, and I've got this rifle. Like, fuck! Like, you know, that's the part people have thought. What the fuck would that be like to see someone else shot him first? By the way, I did actually have a banter. I'll tell you this one because it's from so old. And this I'm going to do with the score esports and cannibalize my old content. I did once have a joke like that where I said on By the Numbers, someone asked the question like, what would you do if you had a time machine? And my joke was I'd go back and I'd fire first, and then everyone on the scene would be like, what the fuck? So like my joke was the people on the grassy knoll would be like, what the fuck? The fucking CIA guy would be like that. Oswald would be like, what the hell's going on? And then like he'd probably dead in the same way, but I'd have just fucked everyone's conspiracy angle even more.
You'd Greedo the JFK scene.
Yes. Because the other detail that makes it funnier is I'm not going back to stop it. I'm going back to make it even more fucked up, like you say, like it's George Lucas that shit. I know.
George Lucas directs the new JFK movie. That'd be fucking hilarious. Dude, that actually does sound like you know, an Inglourious Bastard style, like Quentin Tarantino movie about JFK.
Alternate history movie. Because, you know, I always thought that about Inglourious Bastards. When you get to the point, spoiler, where it doesn't go like history, and he just kills Hitler and all them, and you just think, wait a minute, he's right. We could have just been doing this with films the whole time. You never had to actually make it what happened. Actually, wait a minute, why aren't there a million films? That was the first thought I had, man. This is actually a cool idea.
It's like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he just like kills the Manson family.
Same thing. No, the joke is it's like he corrected history how he wanted it, didn't he, in both cases? Yeah, exactly. Because I actually thought the same thing on that one too. I was like, actually, yeah, true. You don't have to follow it and have them get killed that way, I guess. You're right. You can just do whatever you want, right? You're the film director. Why not?
Have either of you been to Northern Ireland? Also, do you remember what public perception and opinion of Northern Ireland was like during the Troubles in the 90s? I've always wondered what the outside world saw of our little conflict.
Oh, is this person Irish is the premise, right?
They're Northern Irish. So I've lived in Dublin, guys. Like I went to Trinity for a year in university, and I had professors who obviously lived through the Troubles, and so I talked to them about it. I have not been to Northern Ireland. I've only been to the Republic. But I've traveled all over the Republic of Ireland, like, you know, West Coast, South, everywhere. So, I mean, a lot of my knowledge of the Troubles was like what happened in the Republic and hearing stories from people there about like the bombing of Nelson's Pillar, you know, the big events that happened there, and especially around Trinity too, considering it was like the Protestant, you know, university within Ireland. So I would not say like I am a total outsider because I like lived in that culture. You know what I mean? And I have Irish friends, and I spoke to Irish people very directly about it. So my knowledge came later in my life. I wasn't at an age where I was really, you know, in the 90s, I was like a child and a teenager. So I wasn't really super aware of world events, I would say, during that time period of my life. The maximum age I was in the 90s was 13 years old. I was born in 86. So I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but I can say like I'm relatively aware of it now. And it's pretty crazy that, you know, they're electing people from the former rebellion group into positions of power in Northern Ireland now. Like that's quite the reversal.
All I would say is this. I obviously did live through that time period, but I was a boy in the 80s. Obviously, I was like, the joke is I could only at most be 7 because I was born in 1983. So all I remember basically was you'd see stories on the news that were like, and this bomb threat was called in and it was blown up by the IRA or whatever. And so that was quite scary at the time. You were like, what the fuck? What? People set off bombs in our country. Now, luckily, I live in the Northeast where there's fuck all important. So those bombs would probably be going off in London or some major city like that. So I was safe in that regard. And then as far as like actual Northern Ireland goes, the only thing I remember remember was those insane stories of stuff like paramilitary people just doing stuff like just pulling up on a guy on the street and just shooting him in the head with a pistol and walking off. Like, there was some crazy shit. And obviously the famous thing you'd also hear in England was anytime they ever did those marches where they do the political thing, those would always be like, everyone was waiting for that to just be like a fucking powder keg and go crazy. So essentially, I would just say, if people don't know, I actually think that's one area what foreigners don't really think about is that, like, dude, Britain had its own thing like that, where we had a country next door to us that's hostile to us. Obviously, historically, they'd say we're hostile to them. And then there was this weird thing where it's like you got some mad ceasefire thing happening over and over again and getting broken. Like, it was actually sort of a fucked up northwestern European version of like the Israel-Palestine conflict or something. It was kind of crazy. So, and also, being as I'm not that knowledgeable about the history of Britain and Ireland in that regard, everyone knows the big broad strokes, but even some of that isn't necessarily true. I'll give you a random one. You can go look up. I actually heard someone once give a scientific explanation for why maybe England didn't actually like fuck them over with that famine with the potatoes. They told me it was something weird, like when you transport potatoes in ships, that something happens differently than when they're just in the field. That they don't. I can't remember what it is. It's something about how they transport and they go off in some fucked up way, and that was one of the things that like fucked up the crop or something. But it's one of those ones where everything's painted with broad strokes, and we're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago as time goes on. So I don't really know that much about that topic, mate. Don't know fuck all. So there you go. There's the little bit I was getting from my part of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty familiar.
One last thing I'll say is this. I will say, because there was a stand-up comedian once did a joke like this, Monty. The most annoying thing about the Northern Ireland situation is how fucking stupid young people are when they hear about it. Because what they do, like everything, Monty, is they think everyone else was a moron, and they decide that they can look at a problem for 5 seconds and solve it like that. Well, it's obvious you should do this. So a stand-up comedian once did a joke version of this, Monty. He goes, I don't see what the big deal is. Like, at the end of the day, why don't the people from Northern Ireland just come back to the UK and give them Ireland back? And then someone goes, in the comedy sketch, the guy goes, well, that's the problem, because they're not actually like British in the same way. They're like culture, like historically Irish, and they culturally have their own area, and it's neither Republic of Ireland or Great Britain, so they wouldn't want to leave. And he's like, oh, right, shit, yeah. Oh, in that case, I guess they can't just integrate with the main Irish people. Well, in that case, why not just give them like their own area though, and then they could just be in that area, and they say, that is what they did, you idiot. That is it. Like, essentially, this is the compromise that we've had to come to, and because you can't rewind the clock hundreds of years, there isn't really a solution, is there? Like what do you do with this? You just have a weird sort of stalemate, don't you? That's the best you can hope for, because people have counter philosophies, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you know, I think my sense of 20th century Irish history is quite good, just because I lived there, and you know, I'm familiar with, especially because I studied a lot of Irish literary figures like Yeats, for example, you know, Joyce, like, so I know a lot of the history that happened, and also just from being in Ireland, going to the museums, the historical sites, everything like that. But I definitely know it from the Irish perspective almost entirely. And also, like, I'm a big fan of Irish trad music, and like 90% of that is about killing English people. So it's about hating, you know, the black and tans and all of that stuff. So I do, but I would say I'm very unusual for an American, and it's because I lived there and I very particularly studied Irish literary history and Irish history itself. So
no, mate, I don't even pretend to know about that shit. Like, one, obviously, maybe the film Hunger about Bobby Sands was some sort of inspiration for evil geniuses and how they run their team, keep people nice and hungry,
it's a good movie,
keep them on the edge. That's a good one.
It's
and then also movie. The other angle is almost all that I know about the Troubles comes from songs like Zombie by the Cranberries, and I don't know about their tanks and their bombs and their guns and their guns and their guns and their guns. Yeah, I get it. Okay, I get it. Okay, I get it. It's cool. It's okay. It's okay. It's all right. I preferred it when you talk about lingering. Just go back to lingering. Stop it with the guns and bombs and zombies. Go back to lingering. Okay. Right, next question.
What do you think of Coach Kim's history and his current work with Gen G? Do you have any insight on why Score
Shall I tell you why this is a question? Shall I tell you why this is a question, Monty?
Sure.
Because it's a famous narrative on Western Reddit that this guy is a complete fraud and none of his wins should count for him. Did you know that?
No.
Well, bro, remember, this guy was a coach at T1. He was a coach of fucking IG or whatever when they won Worlds, wasn't it? Sure. I think it was IG he was on the coach. He was coach of a bunch of massive teams, by the way. And the fans all claim he's one of those guys where he just got the credit because he was the head coach. He's actually some sort of bomb who moves on. I find that weird, mate, because all I'll say is this. I don't think you can accidentally get a resume like this, mate. You don't accidentally trip over and win like this and keep moving job to job to job to job. Like, It's not that nepotistic in industry, guys, especially not as head coach. Maybe if you're some like shitty little side coach that a guy keeps bringing. If you're the head coach, you have to actually be sort of good at your job to keep getting these gigs, in my opinion. So I would just imagine, I'll infer instead, that means there's maybe rumours from certain players didn't like him or disagree with him. Well, spoiler, like at the beginning of this episode, sometimes good coaches are going to have problems with their fucking players. I'd actually be really worried, by the way, about the coach that players only ever say nice things about. He might have just been kissing their ass too much or just playing what they wanted. So I'm actually not sure what to make of the Kim guy, because again, since obviously I can't talk to him and I don't have like super deep Korean scene contacts, I just look at his resume, it looks bagging. So fair play, he's had to move on a few times, but it's got a very interesting career. What's your take on him?
I would generally agree with that. He's also been all over the world, which is pretty interesting. And he's been kind of on a break for quite a long time now, right? Like he hasn't actually coached the team in a significant amount of time, like several years. So look, I'm surprised they moved on from Score, especially because Score was so successful.
Oh, of course.
Right. And it's even weirder that Score hasn't been picked up by another team. I don't know the reason behind that. For all I know is money. Like maybe Score wanted a bunch of money and Gen G didn't have money to give to him.
He'd be totally justified asking for it. He's won 3 titles in a row in the LCK. I would ask for more money too, of course.
So I don't know what the reasoning is. Perhaps, Coach Kim is significantly older. He's 35, so perhaps they wanted more of an authority figure at this point, because it's not like he's the only coach for Gen G. I doubt he's doing much of the strategy. I'd assume that you guys do know that they like brought Mata in to help with this kind of stuff.
By the way, my assumption is this guy's just the head coach, like you're saying. He doesn't do strategic. By the way, as an aside, though, I will say this. Actually, the only time my Joker metaphor does fail is with Score, because one, Joker is the old alias of Score, and he definitely didn't get what he deserved in his career. He did not get what he deserved. Quite the opposite.
Yeah, so like...
Shout out Startail back in the day.
Yeah. Mata obviously is a legendary player, maybe the best player of all time at his position. So, they don't have, it's not like they have they're lacking in terms of their coaching staff when it comes from a strategic perspective as well. So yeah, I mean, I think they also have Helper, who used to be a top lane pro, not a particularly notable one, but he was kind of kicking around in like the 2015 era, 2016 era, and has been doing a lot of coaching around the world ever since, including with like Suning and PSG Talon, and he was on Gen G previously for a short stint. So I think if you wanted somebody as a head coach who's more of like that authority figure and somebody who's going to kind of like handle player disputes and maybe not influence the strategy as much, maybe that's the kind of person they decided they needed to handle the players. I don't know. So a Reddit comment with over 100 upvotes referred to Adam as the forgiven of top lane. Is this actually the worst Reddit take Reddit has ever created? If not, what is your number? Well, I don't know what the worst one is. They're coming up with new ones every day.
Here's the problem. If they want to go from like attitude-wise, I'm with them. The problem is, as an actual player, I think it'd be inappropriate. Like one thing, first of all, about Forgiven is, Forgiven was like a god laner. He was unbelievable. He essentially set the meta of how you played the bot lane aggressively. And also, even though he certainly had a very like one-dimensional view of the game, he was amazing at calling around himself, if people don't know. Like he knew what he needed to carry a game with his champion, these lanes, and the opposing team comp. The problem I have is I don't think the player part would be appropriate for Adam, because as I said, I think part of what allowed him to be the best is the system created around him by his coach. The joke about Forgiven is he almost succeeded in spite of what his coaches did sometimes. So I think attitude-wise, though, I'm with you. I put it this way, there's very few players that I've ever heard of who were as troublesome as people like Forgiven, Adam, Reckless, Dardoch. Like these people, they deserve their reputation. Oh, the joke is Reckless didn't get it, as you'll find out soon. But these people behind the scenes have a million nightmare stories of them doing crazy shit like that, yeah. So he's certainly in that category. He deserves it.
What is the best single game of League of Legends ever played by a team of 5? I guess it's just one game of League played out by an entire team. So like, what would be the best coordination?
If we're not making it like the quality of the match, you know what? Believe it or not, T1 fans, you might win on this one. Even the modern day T1s had a few games that were incredible, looked really fucking amazing from start to finish, where they had interesting comp, they played it out correctly. Obviously, old school T1 had some fucking bangers back in the day.
I mean, like, if you actually want to see like crazy domination, I mean, one of the single best play sequences of all time was the second game against OMG in 2013 Worlds that T1 played, where it was the best of ones, but it was their second match. They had lost the first one to OMG. And it was the game where they took the inhibitor in like one sequence in the mid lane, where they took like all 3 turrets and repeatedly killed everybody on OMG until they got like a 16-minute inhib. It was amazing when it happened. You watch it today, it's still fucking amazing. Yes. The game was quite different back then. So as far as like a group of 5 players crafting one sequence, that's definitely up there. I haven't thought about that though, in terms of like player perfection. I mean, honestly, like one of the best games, at least in the last couple of years, was that game where Faker played set mid against the Freaks last year.
Oh, right, yes.
And he just like kept going bot and like diving their bot lane. It was probably one of the best first 15 minutes that I've ever seen. In terms of complete domination.
I'd have to think for a specific one, but like if you're a fan of team fighting, there'll definitely be a JDG game from last year where they'll have played like the most godlike team fights of all time.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
They had unbelievable team fights at times. I mean, actually, I'll tell you what, there was that game everyone remembers from summer last year. I think it was summer. Was it summer or MSI? You remember there was a game where BLG and JDG played, and it's like they perfectly played their team comps. I think I'm thinking of the right teams, where it was like the players, or was it T1 and BLG? I forget which one it was. But anyway, what happened in this match was it was like both teams just played out the team fight perfectly for each champion. And so you saw like an amazing, like the Syndra did the scat of the fucking week, and then the other one came in like, oh, it was fucking insane. I think it was JDG BLG. Someone tell me in the chat if they remember the game I'm talking about. It was a banger. Like, someone says they think it was MSI. It could be, okay. But I remember there was an insane game like that where both teams essentially, it's like your dream. They both actually understood the win conditions of the comp and did it right at the same time, back and forth. It was dope.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that a little bit more. It's a good question, though. All right, we're going to do one more, guys, and then I'm going to need to go because I need to sleep at some point. I'm going to clean up this question a little bit in terms of language. Why are we all pretending the LCS product was ever good? The casters analysis, all of it was very bad. Richard Lewis in his video said the changes, cutting some of this was bad / appealing to idiot fans, but I think he misses the fact that the product has always been bad, plus all the talent are afraid of saying actual criticism. Basically saying that the CS scene does actual criticism better. Every time I hear a desk, it is always like a PR team for big players on big teams. They look like Riot's got guns to their heads when they're on desk. I mean, look, this is what LCS wanted. You know, they wanted to be like the NFL, and they intentionally chose people and trained them and gave them feedback to make them like the most milquetoast professional sports league. I was not ever told that by OGN. OGN loved the kind of, loved the kind of controversy that I was causing, because they rightly saw it as entertainment and wanted me to like stir the pot. Right. And I think CS and esports in general, people have the real fans, like the hardcore grassroots fans, have more of an affinity to that. And Riot just took it away. I think it's, part of the reason why potentially the LCS product has not been doing super well over a number of years is because when you lost the players, right, the spicy players and the interesting storylines of the players, the talent wasn't there to fall back on, right? It doesn't, they haven't built themselves up as their own characters. I think LEC did a much better job of building their casters up as compelling characters.
Dude, I also think an angle people don't factor in is that they themselves just got bored of it. Like, another problem the LCS has is, even though they bragged for those first years, part of that was the novelty of having a league. Well, eventually you're going to have to see, can it stand up on its own two legs when there isn't novelty, when it's just the same thing every year? And spoiler, I think people are sick of it now. They're sick of the same carnival, getting back on the horse at the beginning of the carousel, and then see a garbage performance at Worlds. So what I would say is this. I actually think what the LCS did is miss one of the most fundamental concepts about media that's about sports opinions, which is you need the controversial guy.
Of course.
He even allows the less controversial person to be interesting. What you need is this. You don't want a broadcast where everyone says everything that the fans like in a milquetoast way, like you're saying, Monte. The joke is that has its own role as well, but what you need to do is basically hit a bunch of demographics at once. So simultaneously, you want someone like Emily Rand or in Counter-Strike Maniac to not ever flame the player, but politely critique the player and say, I think he could have done this better and this is what they should do. But then you also need the guy like me or Monte or someone, could be a fucking Yanko, to come and go, he wasn't just bad, he was fucking shit in that game. And in fact, I think it was a disgrace the way he played that. You need that opinion so that also, like you're saying, first of all, there's a hardcore fan who doesn't want it all dressed up and stick up your ass and a fucking tie and a blazer on. They want to know the real take, which is this wasn't just a bad game. This was an egregiously bad one. And by the way, by doing that, you actually allow people to then have the more boring, you allow a balance of opinions. And even though the people who want the milquetoast opinion, Monty, are going to go, I hate this guy saying the controversial thing, they will not be able to tune out. History has proven they will be a moth to a flame who cannot keep diving into that fire, even though they know it will burn them. Because if you just look at Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless or my own career, the joke is, Monty, and this isn't even a joke really. When I did that tweet at the beginning of this year, which was just a statement of intent, I wasn't teasing anything. When I said I might fuck around and do a couple of events this year, bro, I had even people who hate me that were like, I was never a big fan, but actually, we need you on the desk. And they get it. They even get that the joke is, like you're saying, Monty, what if the game's shit? Well, I'll tell you why you stick around if the game's shit, because I'm going to go fucking ham when the game is shit. So you know my segment's going to be spicy as fuck. So it's a way you can make the boring games entertaining, basically.
I get people in my streams now when I do a VOD review where they're like, I'm here because I want to watch you flame this game. Because I want to see your reaction. And that makes it more fun.
Is this, Monty? Riot inadvertently discovered that has value, but not the smart way. Because that's what they've outsourced to the core streams. The core streams just do all that for them, and then they still get to count the number,
I also think kind of why the LCS has sucked is because it's in proximity of the biggest morons that are in the executive suites in Riot Esports. And when you're right next to those people and you're in their time zone and they're watching your games, that's when you're going to get, this criticism, right? Because they're the ones who are just going to be like, well, the next day at the office, they're like, well, I have some feedback for you guys. And I think blah, 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 blah. And these are the same dipshits that made the product bad, that made the format bad in the first place, that thought it should be like the NFL. It's the same morons. And they are right in your ear constantly giving you feedback. And because they are in a higher position than you, telling you things, all the producers are like, well, we got to change this. All the cast are like, well, we got to change this. Meanwhile, everybody else is like, has a layer of abstraction between the dumbass executives and them. So I think, those idiots had a lot more of an effect on LCS than they did on other regions, where it's just too far away for them to really, or like, oh man, if I have to give them feedback, then I have to like think about it and write it up in an email. And that takes time. So, fuck it. I'm just not going to do that. Right. So I think that's another massive factor. But of course, these people will never be fired or punished in any way or demoted or had their positions changed or kept away from the product in any way, despite the fact that it is the league that has fallen the most in terms of viewership.
Oh, it's insane.
Every other league has grown.
Can you even imagine, Monty, for real, if I went back in time, you pick the year, 2016, 2015, 2014, could you even conceive if we told everyone, one day the LCS will be dog shit for views, but European League will be the big one? Like, they would be like, there's no way. That would be like a complete inversion. Like, that would be like some clown, fucking funhouse mirror version of League.
In 2024, regular season games in Korea, in Europe, are peaking at their highest ever. We haven't seen a peak in LCS since like fucking 2017, like 2016. This thing literally peaked like 7 years ago, and we've never gotten back to that point. It's pathetic. but nobody's
Well,
ever
enough
held
about
responsible for
Double
this.
Enough about Double F's life. So, oh, sorry, yeah, my bad. You meant Riot, yeah, LCS, of course, yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you for your questions. We didn't get to them all this week. Apologies, but this show is now, once it starts to get over 3.5 hours, we kind of just have to like throw the towel in on it. So we will see you for more questions next week. And remember to check out Competitive Edge as well on the Esports Bet channel. See you then.